Okay.
I just pressed it. Okay, we are live for take 2 of episode, 393 of Keeping Karlsson. My internet is connected. Brian, I think you're trying to talk, but you're muted, but that's cool. 'Cause I'm just going to continue to say hi. Hi, everybody. It's Elon. Brian, you're here, hopefully. Uh, should we retake this? We
Hi.
can't. Ah, there he is.
Hi. It's actually really good because I said something in like a really dumb voice, and then I said I would like take 3 for that. But that's just the secret of what I said, and you did not hear. You're welcome.
Okay, I'm glad that we didn't.
Glad it's muted. Okay. So you ready to get this party started?
I don't see why
Let's
not.
just go for it. We spent an hour last night troubleshooting, taking questions. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I think we've done it.
Let's get off and running here, please.
Shams and Adam, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Hey, Shams and Adam.
All right.
I liked Adam made, a comment about maybe if you got under a blanket, the blanket's going to live on forever. And we got one comment on our YouTube video.
I saw
yesterday from Panic. What's his name? Panic Room.
I wish there was some like plausible reason why going under a blanket would help the network connection. Because if there was, I would have done it. I just needed something.
You didn't even try it.
All right.
Maybe the blanket has, is covered in connectivity. What am I saying? Let's get started.
All right.
Let's do this.
I don't really. Okay. Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who are making a second attempt at recording this episode for those of you who have been following the saga over on YouTube and Discord. I am your host, Elon Dubrovsky, and we've got a really fun show for you today. We're going to pretend like it's still All-Star Weekend, because that's when we were supposed to record the show, but it's Monday night, and we are going to talk all about some looking back on All-Stars, No Stars, all of that with myself and my very good buddy, the IPP MVP, the fantasy hockey robot himself. Welcome back to Keeping Karlsson after a well-deserved week off, Brian Com!
Hello, Elon. Hello, everyone. Any podcast with you happens inherently during All-Star Weekend. You're just that good at what you do. So I'm privileged to have you as a podcast buddy, and I'm very happy to be back in the saddle for our stunning and sterling recap on all of the All-Star action from the weekend. This episode is going to be all about the All-Star game, which I think happened on... Could you imagine if we actually did that? It's not. We're actually going to be...
Claude Giroux won the All-Star MVP. Is that a sign that he's about to take off and lead the league in points? We should read into the stat lines from the All-Star game and find any fantasy relevance in there.
And then we're also going to discuss exactly how the Metropolitan team should distribute their $1 million winnings amongst each team member based on their fantasy contributions. Strap in. It's going to be a wild ride.
Okay. We're going to try our best to make a fun show. Obviously, there haven't been too many NHL games since my last episode with Scott Cullen, which was awesome. Thanks again, Scott, for coming on. So instead, Brian and I decided we're going to do something a little different for this week's show. We're going to take a look back on the season. We thought the lens we'll look at it in is Brian did a fantasy draft for the tier 2 of the Cupful. It's called Tier 2 Ottawa, the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. I did a draft in Tier 1, which was an auction draft, which regular listeners from the show already know all about that because we did a whole show broadcasting that draft. So we thought we would take a look at Brian's draft, which was a snake draft, go through each round and pick out one player that was like the best pick from that round and one player that was the worst pick from that round, with the goal of making, I guess, an all-star team and a no-star team, or all dud team of the best and worst picks. And I think it'll be fun to just go back, kind of see which players were ranked too high going into drafts, which players were ranked too low. And then Brian and I can discuss if we think that we were just wrong at the start of the season, or are these players that seem like they were such great or terrible picks, are they going to go back to our expectations from the start of the year? So I think it's going to be a really fun journey back through the Tier 2 Ottawa draft. So that's the plan for today. Of course, before we get to it, let's mention quickly that Keeping Karlsson is very proudly presented by DobberHockey.com, your number one website for all of fantasy hockey. I don't understand how you can even play fantasy and be successful without checking out that site every once in a while. Great articles. I love the daily ramblings. The tools at Frozen Tools are fantastic. So check it out, DobberHockey.com. But with that, Brian, this is your draft. So I feel like we should just start with what it was like for you going back, looking through each round. I gotta imagine there's some moments of thinking, "Wow, I really nailed that pick," and other moments of, "Wow, I really blew it." Any general takeaways on your end? And obviously, as we go through in this episode, we'll like remind people or tell people what the picks actually were. But is any overall takeaways from looking through this draft from a few months ago?
Yeah, unfortunately, there were a lot more of the moments of the variety of, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Like there are several rounds where I can make an argument I made the worst pick. And going back and trying to learn lessons from this was insightful and painful. And I hope to share that pain for the common good, of course, to see how things go. But it is crazy to look back at the draft. You know, we're halfway through the season. Sometimes we do it at the end. And I actually think it's really good for everyone to take this mid-season checkpoint, because obviously we're going to feel different about some of our picks by the end of the season. And it's pretty good to look at it while it's still kind of fresh. And the draft wasn't that long ago, that we can still remember what we were thinking about these players when they were picked. I'm very happy to name my mistakes on this upcoming episode. And, I think I had a couple hits too that I'm feeling pretty happy with. But on the whole, yeah, draft strategy is a fun thing to think about. I mean, there's definitely some positional sort of lessons to be learned about, when to take a goalie and when to take a defenseman and when to take forwards. And also the thing I found most interesting, and we'll get to this like as we go, I'm not going to announce it now, but to find the moment at which it's time to start making those less safe picks. Like you want to make safe picks through the first round, through the second round, through the third round. But there is a sort of tipping point where you're going to want to start trying to take swings that are a little bigger, but you probably don't want to jump and start reaching before that tipping point. And also, I was also finding Elon, defense went fast, and especially in this draft. And a lot of people were guessing. We'll get to round 4, and there were a couple big duds picked in the 4th round on defense in this draft. And it's that to me is what I'm really trying to learn a lesson about here, because there's some good defensemen who went a lot later and some good defensemen who went a lot sooner. And then a lot of guys who were kind of in the middle between those great guys on, bookended by the great guys at the start and great guys at the end, who I want to try and figure out how to better avoid next time around. I actually did a pretty good job avoiding them this time around, but I need to repeat that for the next time, because I think I might have just gotten lucky. So I'm also interested, Elon, as an outside observer, to hear your overall, do you have an overall takeaway from the draft results before we, dig into the round by round looks to pick our all stars and all duds teams?
Yeah, I guess my big takeaway is I'm taking a look. I looked at both the results from each round. I also took a look. I made a sheet. We have a spreadsheet here that we're going to share with all the patrons on Discord. We actually already did, where I also listed all the top undrafted players, like all the undrafted, the forwards, defensemen, and goalies. And my real takeaway, I think that I jump away with, is that there are so many great forwards that didn't get drafted, which really makes me think that maybe the right strategy going to these drafts is obviously get your studs, right? Get your McKinnons if you can, like Patrick Kane, even though he's been kind of dead. We'll maybe talk about him. Brady, I don't know. I'm just mentioning some star. Obviously you want to get your star forwards, but I think there's a point in the draft where it's almost worth it to tell me if this is crazy, Brian. Maybe draft one more defenseman than you plan to roster and one more goalie than you plan to roster. Because you're saying, you might end up with a dud defenseman that you beat yourself up on. So why not just take multiple? In round 6, round 7, grab a couple D, even though you really are thinking for your roster construction you don't need it. Because I feel like you'll just drop that defenseman and you'll have some great skaters. I'm just going to name some skaters that didn't get drafted in your draft. We've got Matt Duchene, who's been a huge star all season. We've got Alex Tuck, who obviously that's maybe a different story because he was injured, but he's been amazing lately. Duclair's had an amazing season. Boone Jenner, we talked about, for the first few weeks of the show, can Boone Jenner keep this up? We haven't even mentioned Boone Jenner for a couple of months because he's just been this really solid presence. Erod, Evan Rodriguez, Barbashev, Jeff Skinner. There's a lot. You could build a pretty solid second half of your forward core just from the undrafted players. So I think obviously this assumes that you're good at fantasy and you're good at playing free agency and getting these players, and but I think my strategy that I might try next time I'm in a snake draft or maybe even an auction draft, and I don't know yet, I'm just thinking this through as I came up with it, but I think that there might be something to draft extra defensemen and extra goalies even though you don't need so many, figure out in the first week or two who's a hit, who's a miss, and you'll probably be wanting to draft some of these awesome forwards, like pretty quickly. You'll want to pick up. You're even like what was Lucas Raymond drafted? I'm gonna have to look down here. Like I feel like, or maybe he was in the very last round. Anyways, I guess you were gonna say, Michael Bunting is one. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like you said, figure out in the first week or two who's a hit, who's a miss. That's the tricky part, right? Because I can load up on defense, but picking the sweet spot of when to give up on my defender and buy in on a hot forward is really hard. Right. I mean, this year, though, we saw some guys stumble right out of the gate and never recover. Like, of course, Chychrun and Petrie are the big examples, but those wouldn't be the guys you'd be dropping. I'd guess you'd be dropping your 5th or 6th D picks to beef up on forward. And you have in the Cupful, you have 13 other managers racing. Like you named a solid assortment of guys. Like, there's also Ryan Hartman and Troy Terry and Marcus Foligno and Adrian Kempe. Like all these guys were available in free agency, but I don't know that if there's, one per manager of a guy who's of, season-long hold quality. So you've got to be not just really good. It's not just about being good at playing free agency. It's about being lucky too, right? Because, like it's every one of these guys is a lotto ticket, and some of them pay off right away. Some of them pay off a couple weeks down the road. But I agree that we know it's a lot easier to find forwards out of free agency than a defenseman who's going to be able to make big contributions. We know that goalies sometimes appear in free agency, but not. So like forwards are the least scarce resource. So yeah, if you want to leave one part of your team to fill in after the draft, you can look, but it's just hard if your plan is to load up on defense and figure it out in 2 weeks. It's not I don't think it's quite as easy as it sounds.
Right. I think another thing might be also that if you load up on defense, maybe it'll be easy to make a trade early on when people start realizing, oh man, I definitely don't have enough defense and there's all these good like I'm thinking of like when Lucas Raymond shot out of the gate, like all these like good forwards and people like were having to drop people. I don't know. Anyways, just a thought, like I'm looking at my Cupful team and it's like, it's pretty crazy. Like a lot of my best players are people I grabbed out of free agency, but like all forwards, right? I have like Bratt, Boldy, Atkinson, Duclair. Like it's like, I don't know how I got, like, I got lucky, I guess, and I picked up these guys. But in the meantime, I still just have good old, or not, maybe even old Darcy Kemper as my goalie. Then I grabbed Francouz at some point. I really wish I would have just drafted, another goalie at some point instead of all these like forwards. I ended up dropping a bunch of forwards. But anyways, those are some general takeaways. I guess this will be fun to dig into round by one. So Brian, with that, are you ready to get going here?
Yeah, let's do it. So again, for anybody, just to remind the format, so we're going to go through each round, and from each round, we're going to choose one player to nominate to our all-star team of that round. So we're compiling a team from one player from each round to make our all-star team, our all-star fantasy draft team, and we're going to do it on the opposite end too. So we're going to find one player who was the dud, the no-star of the round, and put them on a separate squad too.
Okay, so let's do this. Round one, so I guess no terrible picks here, of course. A couple that we can nitpick over, but like basically it went McDavid first, McKinnon, Draisaitl, Matthews, Kucherov, which this was before he was injured, though I'm sure Ian is happy to have him now if he still has him. I haven't checked actually the roster currently, but then Pasternak, Rantanen, Ovechkin, Marner, Patrick Kane, Panarin, Barkov, that was you, and Marchand and DeBrincat to end the round. So no shortage of options for the best pick. This is not going to be a round where we're like someone got a huge steal. Like I think the best pick here is pretty clear between a couple of players. Who did you go with for your best pick on this round?
My best pick, I mean, obviously I could be bored. Like I could do the obvious and say Connor McDavid. It's hard to say that I would take any of these guys over McDavid if I was redrafting again right now or at the start of next season. But if I did have to pick somebody different, I would go and take a look at Austin Matthews, especially in leagues that are goal heavy. Being able to get a player like Austin Matthews outside the top 3 picks, let alone outside the top pick, is incredible, right? The guy's on pace for 105 points, which is nothing new. Last year, Matthews paced for 104 points. The year before, he paced for 94 points. And he's got 29 in goals in 40 games this season, which again is nothing new. So he's trending for almost a 60-goal season with 19 power play points in 40 games. So he could very well approach, the 35 power play point mark too. Everything just looks amazing for him, and everything looks amazing for a lot of these first round picks. So I'm not saying one over the other, but Austin Matthews has been an incredible value at 4th overall. And if I were redrafting today, I think, like going into the season, it was who are you going to pick first? Probably McDavid. And then there was Matthews and Draisaitl and McKinnon and Kucherov sort of all lumped together as the next group. And I guess Pasta was in there too. I think Matthews has probably leapt to the top of that group, just by virtue of continuing to do what we've seen him do already for a couple seasons. So it's not that we needed to wait to be a believer, but I think he has just continued getting better and better. He's just 24 years old, right? This is the prime of his career, and it's really exciting to see him do his thing, also averaging over 4 shots per game over 40 games, which is incredible. So Austin Matthews, I think, is amazing. I think if I had to pick my nominee to the All-Star team, you know what? Fine. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go Austin Matthews. Elon? Uh-oh. Elon.
Did it just freeze?
Hey, can you hear me?
Oh no, did it? That's free. I'm plugged in. It says I'm plugged in.
Elon. Oh no.
Mm.
Oh no. Oh no. Shit.
What the hell? No.
It says your connection is your connection unstable. R.I.P. Oh no.
Oh my god.
Okay, Elon. We're gonna power through this one way or another. Can you hear me?
Worst. Now I can hear you.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You're a couple seconds behind. A show featuring 2 fantasy hockey robots. Sign me up. So long as they're fantasy hockey robots with solid internet connections.
I have a fucking. I don't know. I don't know what's. Should I have not? Fucking hell.
Is the adapter the problem? Did you need it to be
now it's
hardwired?
This is a different adapter now, and it's like showing it as hardwired in. Like this is how it always is. Like it's like as if like just upgrading the OS, which I didn't even want to do. Maybe I have to buy my own computer, not use my work computer. It's so annoying. What is this? What is this?
I don't know.
All right, maybe now we're good. I don't know. Is it still delayed?
Well, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, a small delay, nothing we can't work through.
All right. So you were saying
I said I'm going Matthews as my round 1 All-Star.
Okay, so I'll just respond and we'll do our best.
And could we, before we go further, since we're stopped, could we choose like a term for the opposite? Like, do you want to call them no stars? I don't want to go back between calling them duds or no stars or whatever. All-star, no star. Okay. Oh no.
Oh my god. Elon,
your connection was great for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, what is that?
It couldn't handle me talking.
It's like,
is there anything else happening on your internet connection at home?
I don't think so.
Is anyone using the phone?
The phone?
That's a joke.
It's not the 90s. All right. So what do you want to call it? I don't know.
No stars.
No star team.
Reboot. Ryan says reboot your router and call your ISP.
Well, if I do that, yeah, I'll be like, oh, my podcast. And they'll be like, oh, everyone has a podcast nowadays.
Yeah, but
All
they
right.
didn't. They didn't when we started.
Yeah. All right. Let me just respond and we'll just do our best. I don't
Okay.
know. Seems to
Yeah.
be better now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
I
moment
can
of
turn off my.
silence for my fan.
Oh, good one. Oh, Shams is asking if I'm downloading updates. I don't think so. It doesn't seem like it. I can check the activity monitor, see what activities my computer is up to. Doesn't I don't know.
Monitor your activities closer.
I mean some things are Ruby is taking up 98%. That shouldn't be. My mistake times program probably shouldn't be taking 98% of the CPU, but CPU is different than I guess it's all a computer at the end of the day, right?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna try something here. Oh yeah, this is a process that has been running for 5 hours. Okay, I'm gonna stop a process.
Such good. Yeah. I
Force
believe in
quit.
you.
Okay, yeah, that didn't stop my. All right, I stopped one of my processes from running. That was taking
Finally.
up 98%.
All these
Could be that. Maybe that was
processes.
it.
Maybe it was the
Processes.
process. Don't trust the process.
All right.
Did
I'm
you
gonna
delete?
respond
Did you delete
to.
System 32?
No, what's that?
It's like a very old internet joke.
Oh, okay. All right, you'll explain to me later. I'm gonna respond to you picking Matthews.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going by average cupful points per game, then yeah, Austin Matthews is at the top of the list for the whole league right now, even ahead of Connor McDavid. He's played 39 games and McDavid has played 41. So overall, McDavid is edging him out in points. But yeah, in terms of points per game, Matthews is the top pick. So yeah, even if McDavid ends up with a few more points on the season, obviously all these goals, like you said, are going to give it to Matthews. I'll agree with you. Honorable mention, I'd say, to Alex Ovechkin, picked 8th overall, who was like really just like right behind him and having this monster season himself, which I mean, it's like, it feels weird. Like I can understand why he didn't go in the top 5. And I wonder what's going to happen next year. Like if he continues this for the rest of the year, is he a top 5 pick or do people worry that he's still going to slow down? I guess the thing is like with top 5 pick in fantasy, you really can't go wrong. Like all the players have been good, like McDavid, McKinnon, Draisaitl, Matthews. Obviously Kucherov got injured, unfortunately. But yeah, McDavid, Pasternak had that slow run, but he's been like super hot now, one of the hottest players in the league. So yeah, it's not too much to debate here. Let's go to the worst pick in the first round. And Brian, I guess if I have to pick one, it's going to have to be Patrick Kane, right? That's my pick. I'm curious if you'll agree, but he's played 42 games, only has 50, he's played 42 games and he has 42 points. So obviously that's good. I guess actually it's just like of all the people in this round, he's the one who seems to have the lowest points per game. I guess you can say DeBrincat, but I'm going to give it to Patrick Kane just because he was drafted a little bit earlier. Yeah, 41 points in 42 games, all from these last like 4 games that got him back up to this point per game, right? He was like really cold for a little bit. And just like we predicted on the show, right? Like, I mean, things started going in for him. He had a stretch where he was taking all those shots, nothing was happening. But now in his last 4 games, he's had 2 assists versus Detroit, had 2 goals and an assist versus Colorado, so that's gotten him back on track. But yeah, he's my pick, no star of the first round, Patrick Kane. What do you think?
Patrick Kane is also easily my no star of the top round. He's seeing a big dip in his 5-on-5 scoring. And one secret about Patrick Kane this season and last that I don't think anyone's talking too much about except us here on this show is that Patrick Kane is not shooting as dangerously as he always has at 5-on-5. This is a guy who's made a name for himself as a super threatening, dangerous goal scorer, can score anywhere, anytime. And this year he's losing that. I mean, he is paying extra for, that slide, I think, because he has a shooting percentage that's below what it should be. He's shooting just above 6% at 5-on-5 when normally he can shoot closer to 10%. But really, Patrick Kane is not holding up his full end of the bargain either. Another noticeable piece from Patrick Kane this season and last is that over that time, Kane's on ice expected goals rates are lower than ever. Like he's in pretty rough territory. The Chicago is not doing great with Patrick Kane on the ice, especially compared to what they have historically done with Patrick Kane on the ice. Last year, when Patrick Kane's on ice numbers were similar to this year, Kane had an on ice shooting percentage that was above 10%. So that papered over that. And he and his line mates produced 1 goal per 60 minutes above their expected number. But this year, Kane's seeing a less friendly 7.5% on ice shooting percentage, and that's exacerbating the problem. And Patrick Kane's actual goal production and that of his teammates is more in line with the expected number. So it's been a bad season for Patrick Kane. It's not just bad luck. It's been a bad season. And this is actually going to be theme, I think, throughout this episode. Chicago, everyone, is a disaster. A disaster. They are not a good hockey team at all. You do not want to have to be relying on their players for your key fantasy production, and especially if you picked them in the first round. The flip of this is I'm not sure, because Chicago has been so bad, that this is all Patrick Kane's fault and that he can't, reverse course next season. But he does turn 34 years old in November. So that's early in the next season. And these are the sorts of numbers that are going to push Patrick Kane out of being a top round talent. In fact, I could see, if this keeps up, I could see a very clear argument for pushing Patrick Kane into the second round and welcoming some of the other guys we've talked about this season who've really established themselves. For example, Kyle Connor or even Jake Gensel. There are players who I think are ready to perhaps dethrone Patrick Kane for being a first round fantasy talent.
Yeah, well, and there's also some players who were generally number 1, number 2 picks, like a Sidney Crosby, who was pushed to the second round, that maybe people are now thinking, maybe you should have stuck with Sid over Patrick Kane. He obviously has had more to give so far this season. There's a lot of seasons to go, and like I said, Kane is coming off a really hot stretch, so we'll see if he can keep that going. I guess with Chicago also, it's like some of these players that we were expecting to be like huge deals just haven't really panned out yet, like Kirby Dach. When's the last time we've talked about him on the podcast? Like, hopefully one day he'll be able to be this awesome center for Patrick Kane. But now it's like Dylan Strome centering Kane and not Dach, because I guess it wasn't working. So that's not great.
That's it too, right? Because Patrick Kane, when he's struggled in the past, and he's been able to produce with subpar centermen, but in the past he's always had Jonathan Toews going as sort of a fallback plan. And that fallback plan is now shot to pieces with the way Toews is playing. And exactly, Elon, you've got Strome, you've got Dach. There's upside, there's potential, but completely unrealized. Like, I don't see, especially as Kane, gets older, I would love to know that there is someone reliable that can steadily center him to superstar numbers, which isn't a big ask. Artem Anisimov could do it at one point when Kane was better, but Kane has slipped a little. So now he might need the center do a little more heavy lifting, and the team around him too. Like I said, it's just been so bad. So we'll see what Chicago does in the offseason, but I'm not sure they're going to be substantially better as a team next year, which means Patrick Kane might need to do some reinventing to get himself to be the sort of player who you consider spending a first round pick on.
Yeah, Chicago kind of went all in to get Seth Jones, giving up some key future pieces. And now I guess we're seeing that, Seth Jones is not having a bad season, but he's definitely not like turning them into this amazing team. So they're going to need more than just Seth Jones for the next 8 seasons at $9.5 million per year. Brian, by the way, I just traded him today in my Dynasty League. I don't know if you recall the whole saga.
I remember that was your plan the whole way, right? Was to grab him and enjoy him for this year and then try and offload his contract.
Yeah, but then I ended up just trading him now, even though like I got a better rental, I think. I got Malkin and Pavelski as part of the deal, who are both expiring contracts. Anyways, we don't have time for all this Elon's Dynasty League talk, though. It is pretty fun. But okay, let's go to round 2 now and talk about who are the best and worst picks from this round. So I'll run down the picks. Again, it started with the same person who picked DeBrincat. Also got Zibanejad, good pick. Cale Makar, Tkachuk, that's Brady Tkachuk, Sidney Crosby, Dougie Hamilton, Max Pacioretty, who I'm not going to count, even though like he's been disappointing, I'm sure, but that's because he's been injured. Well, I think in general, Brian, we're not counting injuries, right? As a general policy here, I feel like that's unfair.
Yeah, we're not going to penalize anyone unless they were injured when they were drafted.
Sure.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But if a player got injured, we can't penalize them for having been injured.
Okay, Zibanejad, Makar, Brady Tkachuk, Crosby, Hamilton, Pacioretty, Gensel, Vasilevsky, Huberdeau, John Carlson, Steven Stamkos, Sebastian Aho, Victor Hedman, and Braden Point round out the second round. How about I'll go first and give my top pick of the round? To me, it's pretty obvious. I'm very curious to see if you'll agree. Brian and I didn't discuss this in advance. We don't know who each other's picks are, but I'm going to say Cale Makar in a runaway. He's been insanely good. Just even looking at average a couple points per game, has 6.35, which is ahead of Zibanejad, ahead of almost everyone in this round except for Pacioretty, but obviously a forward and he's been injured, and except for Vasilevsky, who's a goalie, which is a whole other thing. Even then Jonathan Huberdeau, who's had like this insane season, 6.57 a couple points per game, and Cale Makar is 6.35. The value over replacement as a defenseman, like we knew he was great, right? 4 points in 40 games, over a point game. To me, he's my obvious pick of the round. Next year, he'll be a first rounder for sure, I think.
I agree. Cale Makar is a top round talent. I'll be honest, I kind of glossed over Cale Makar in this round, and maybe I shouldn't have, just because it felt obvious, but that's not fair. Cale Makar is up there. I mean, I had Andrei Vasilevsky as another candidate because he has delivered in what's been an impossible position to deliver in past fantasy seasons, which is tier one goalie, top notch, and actually coming through and doing exactly what we'd hope he would, being drafted and actually getting him in the second round. And the couple was pretty rare. So I thought that was, but we're not talking value here. And then Max Pacioretty, I just wanted to shout out, although you and Scott Cullen did a great job of mentioning how great a season he's had. And we've talked on the pod the last couple of years after his first disappointing season in Vegas, how he has kind of reinvented himself and become a new kind of player. He's found new ways to be offensive and threatening and scoring. But I agree. If I could have just one of these guys on my all-star team, it would be Cale Makar. So he's on my all-star. And Elon, I actually had a tough time trying to find the no-star in this group. It was a pretty solid group of players. I think Brayden Point is probably the most obvious one, just because he has not been so consistently offensive the whole way through. Like, he's probably the one in this group who we fielded the most, what's going on with Brayden Point kind of questions. That said, he is on an 80-point pace, which is about what we'd expect from him, despite, maybe having a couple bumps in the road, especially towards the start of the season when he wasn't quite playing like a superstar. He has righted the ship, and that's why I didn't have Brayden Point as my no star here. I actually went... I should go with Brayden Point, actually. He is my choice. But let me just talk about a couple other players first. The first is John Carlson, who's pacing for 65 points, which compares to 69-point pace last season, which compares to 89-point pace the year before. Now, those 89 points for John Carlson a couple seasons back, those were big. We didn't see that holding. But it's frustrating to see Karlsson drift further from 70 points instead of at least sort of holding around there. The good news is that I think there's room for Karlsson to recover, especially on the power play where, he has just 9 points in 43 games. So that makes Karlsson pacing for his lowest power play point total, just 17 points over 82 games. That would be his lowest power play point total since the year that Washington acquired Kevin Shattenkirk to run the top unit back in 2016-17, where it was like, oh, is John Karlsson actually a top power play quarterback? Of course, he's proven it, that he is ever since then. Also, Washington's power play with Karlsson on the ice is shooting less than 10%, which is uncharacteristically low. And I think that is connected to Karlsson's primary assist rate also being super low. At least one of those two things is going to bounce back to return Karlsson to, I think, at least 20, hopefully 25 power play point pace, which would put him back towards that 70-point pace that we'd like to see Karlsson hold at. So if you've been a little disappointed, especially from the power play point production with John Karlsson, you should be, because it hasn't been what we would have wanted it to be at this point of the season, but I think there's room to recover. The other no-star consideration for me was actually Brady Tkachuk. But that's mostly about, and this is one of the reasons why I said injured at the time. He wasn't injured at the time he was drafted, but he was holding out. And so he missed a bit of the start of the season. And when he came, his first couple of weeks were not good. Like, we had a lot of questions about him. Like, has Brady Tkachuk lost it? How much has his holdout destroyed his season? How long is it going to take for him to get on track? And then Ottawa had a whole bunch of games postponed right when Tkachuk was starting to get rolling and kick off the rust. Now, Tkachuk is about to make up for that with Ottawa having a big schedule the rest of the season, and he's looking really good. Actually, I think Tkachuk is actually looking great. He's on pace for barely even 9 power play points this year. And even with that, he's putting up the kinds of numbers that we wanted Brady Tkachuk to put up this season, even without power play production. He had 10 power play points in 56 games last season. So having just 9 power play points like pacing for just 9 power play points over 82 games is not sustainable. That's going to turn. And I think Tkachuk's second half could be better than his first. But just thinking about how the first half went, he's pretty close to a no-star. So he and Carlson are the honorable mentions here, but Point takes the cake as the no-star roster nominee.
Yeah. I mean, I was kind of leaning towards Dougie Hamilton, but again, it's like that's more about injuries. He has 20 points in 30 games, though. It's kind of like similar to a John Carlson, except John Carlson's been healthy. I'm sure, like, I agree with you. Like, Point seems fine. All these picks seem like they were pretty good. No big whiffs here. But obviously, Pacioretty and Hamilton, who I actually drafted both of those guys in a different league, and it's been very frustrating. I'm hoping the second half of the year, Hamilton's still injured. He's been skating for a while, but Damon Severson continues to have that value on the top power play. But I'm good with that, Brian. Let's go to round 3 now. So here's where things get a little bit interesting. So round 3 started with Evgeny Svechnikov, then Tyler Seguin, then Scheifele, Matthew Tkachuk, Gabriel Landeskog, Roman Josi, Adam Fox, Connor Hellebuck, Jacob Chychrun, Patrice Bergeron, Mark Stone, Kirill Kaprizov, 12th in the round by you, Brian, and then Elias Pettersson and Nikolai Ehlers rounding out that round. So I'm sure a lot of people listening to this are thinking like, woo, when we're naming their star players that did well for them. There's also a few names in there that are like, were turned out to be huge grenades that have totally let their managers down. Some of them maybe have even been dropped to free agency, depending how deep leagues were. I don't think any of these guys have been dropped in the cupful, I'd imagine. Maybe Seguin. Has Seguin ever dropped to free agency in your league, or has he been rostered the whole time?
Oh, I can check while you're talking. I mean, I know he dropped in tier 1.
Yeah, he was dropped in tier 1.
Yeah, he's been traded, but he hasn't been dropped.
Okay, yeah. So I feel like I'll just give, even though there's, okay, I'm going to start with the no star and say it has to be Seguin, considering he's been dropped in leagues I'm in. Definitely honorable mention to Elias Pettersson, who has been really bad this year and probably like just as bad as Seguin, really. Actually, if you look at average points per game, Pettersson's been worse than Seguin.
Seguin has actually been better. Like, it's shocking, right? As bad as Seguin has been, somehow he's outplaying Pettersson, and also from the third freaking line or wherever he's been buried. But I think we have to sort of give Pettersson a bit of respect here and just say, like, yeah, it's he's definitely a no star, but Tyler Seguin was the dud pick of the round for sure. Like, if you're playing which one of these guys doesn't belong, it's definitely, we can't not name Tyler Seguin the dud of the group, even though he is outperforming Pettersson to date.
Yeah, well, also, I guess a good tiebreaker could be Seguin was taken second in the round, and Pettersson was taken down at 13th in the round. So you reached to get Tyler Seguin when you could have had, Matthew Tkachuk, Landeskog, some of these names. Like, there's some real performers here. And I think that the best pick in the round, here's my, we actually have another dud here, I guess I should mention, is Jacob Chychrun, right? So that's
easily,
another.
Yeah, I feel like we've mentioned it so many times. It's like just sort of assumed now. But yeah, Jacob Chychrun. By the way, I just want to put out there that Tyler Seguin was drafted a lot later on average than in this draft. Someone really liked Tyler Seguin.
I mean, he's had some really good previous seasons, and I guess the hope was that he'd be able to come back from his injury and just get right back to where he was a couple seasons ago. It didn't happen. By the way, I'm being told I said Evgeny Svechnikov. That would have been a real whiff of a pick here, but no, it was Andrei Svechnikov, who is having an awesome year. There was like a few times on the pod, and I probably should blame myself here, for I would bring him up when he'd be like bumped to a weird line or bumped off the power play. I'm like, oh, should we be concerned about this guy? Like, overall, he's got 38 points in 39 games. He's just having a monster season. So Andrei Svechnikov, just fine. But he's not my star. My star, Brian, kudos to you. I think you have the best pick in the round with a bullet, especially since it was the 12th pick in the round. Karil Kaprizov. holy moly, right? Like this guy had this amazing rookie season last year, won the Calder, and now he's like blowing that year out of the water. 53 points in 40 games. It's like every game Kaprizov is having multi-point games, it seems like lately. He's made people like Ryan Hartman into fantasy superstars. He's the best, and I don't think it's a hot take to say that I think he's the pick of the round, especially so late in the round.
Thank you. Yeah, this is the one moment where I'm going to be really, really pleased with myself and pat myself on the back for Karil Caprizov, who is on a 109 point pace with 53 points in 40 games. Like you said, Elon, making superstars of everyone around him. You said of Ryan Hartman. How about making a point per game centerman of Matt Zuccarello, which is Zuccarello's better than Anisimov, but to sort of make a loose analogy to how amazing Patrick Kane has been over the course of his career, Karil Caprizov is just incredible himself and at making everybody around him better. Every time the puck's on his stick, he's a threat to score, and I don't see any reason to disbelieve anything Kaprizov has been doing. Like, sure, you might say, I could nitpick and say a couple percentages might be a little too high, but at the same time, this is the sort of thing we allow for with a superstar and say, like, yeah, they can be the outliers. Like, it's okay that Kaprizov's on-ice shooting percentage is nearly 14% because that's what elite players can do sustainably. Other players cannot, but elite players can to some extent. So, it looks for sure like he's on pace for a Century Club type season in Minnesota, and getting him where I got him feels really good compared to some of the picks that were made later down the road. One honorable mention here for a great third round pick is Roman Josi, who I'm not sure. I think we've talked about him on the show, Elon, but he's on an 82 point pace right now. Like he's outpointing. He's outperforming Adam Fox, right? And Adam Fox is like, oh yeah, gold standard, third round, way to go. But Roman Josi is crushing it. And this 82 point pace is coming after 56 point pace last year, 77 the year before, 56 the year before. So he's continuing the pattern of like a year crazier. So buckle up for a 55 point season next year for Roman Josi. But this year, point per game pace on the strength of his power play production, 21 power play points in 44 games. That's already his third highest power play point total of his career. And that's actually the whole story. And part of that story is that Josi has scored 7 times on the power play on 37 shots on goal, which gives him a 20% shooting percentage on the power play, which is too high. But we know, like, Roman Josi is not going to have a 40-plus power play point season. However, Nashville's power play is rolling for the first time in a long time, and Josi never really suffered when it did go out, but he definitely can benefit when it is running as smoothly as it is right now. So just want to shout out Roman Josi. If it weren't for Karil Caprizov, he might be somebody that is worth putting on the All-Star team, which is nice because he's someone, everyone I think takes for granted. He's like this quiet, steady defensive producer. And if you have him this year, hopefully you are appreciating all that Roman Josi is bringing to the table.
Yeah, Brian, I can't believe that Josi has got all these power play points, and it's not on the back of Ellie Tolvanen and his power play savior production. It's actually just Matt Duchene and Forsberg and Granlund and company.
Amazing that they fixed that top power play without Ellie Tolvanen. It's like reminiscent of the headline how the Leafs fixed Alex Galchenyuk, and Tolvanen fixing the Nashville power play was also overrated. I'm glad they finally figured it out, though. Took them long enough.
I mean, yeah, they have enough talent. They're spending enough money. Ryan Johansson, Matt Duchene taking home a nice paycheck. Brian, I guess I don't want to leave this round before. I just had to retake a look. You said that we have to give Elias Pettersson respect. Like, do we? I'm just looking recently, his last 3 games, he's pointless in 3 going into the All-Star break with only 2 shots overall in 3 games. Like, he's a total dud. Like, we're getting to a point soon where we're going to have to forget about this All-Star game shtick that we're doing. I feel it's like, at what point do we just tell people to drop him in one-year leagues? Like, I don't know if this is going to change.
I think now, what I've said for the last month or so is wait until after the All-Star break and see if that gives him some time to sort of reset and feel better and get kind of a fresh start on the rest of the season. So I'm sticking with that. But Elon, I am actually going to take your lead and say, just because this is an uncharacteristically high pick for Sagan, I think it might be too much of a slam dunk to put him on the no-star team. Like, his ADP was 50th overall across cupful divisions. And what's this? This is 30th or so. So I'm gonna actually strike him from being eligible for the no star team for that reason, because this isn't representative of what most leagues did, and by a long shot. And I'm gonna put Elias Pettersson on the round 3 no star team.
Okay,
How
I like
about
it.
that?
I like it. We'll publish this, okay, at the end, right? I hope you're keeping track of what the
Barely.
team is.
I'm actually just scrolled back up to the top of my doc to start writing these names down. We'll publish it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Round 4. We're going to get a goalie run, or at least a short one to start. It went Robin Lehner, UC Saros, Darnell Nurse, Kyle Connor, John Tavares, Evander Kane, Elias Lindholm, Seth Jones, Chris Letang, JT Miller, Jeff Petrie, Tyson Barrie, Aaron Ekblad, and then Shea Theodore. So a D run at the end that you wanted to be at the end of and not at the start of. This is a fun round here with some high highs and some low lows. Brian, you want to get us started with the top pick of the round, in your opinion?
Yeah, I was just finishing up.
Or I could go then. I'll just go.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. Some high highs and some low lows. I think for the high pick, like, I'm between two players, okay? I'm looking at UC Saros, who was drafted like pretty high, so it's not as if it was like a huge value pick, though it was like a good pick compared to like Robin Lehner, who went before him. But Saros has had just like this incredible season. He's got like a 927 save percentage. He plays a lot. Like, you know, same with Roman Josi. Like, as Nashville is just really a really great team this year, Saros is a huge volume goalie. I'm in a dynasty league, Brian, where every goalie and every backup goalie is rostered. Like, it's impossible to find a goalie who is a regular in the NHL, and yet David Riddick was dropped, and no one has added him because he never plays. It's just UC Saros, game in, game out, and every game is chef's kiss quality. So I don't know. To me, it's between him and like Kyle Connor, who's having this like amazing, I guess, breakout season. Like, not that he hasn't broken out before, but he's above point per game. But no, I'm gonna have to give it to UC Saros, especially in Cupful, where it's like but in any fantasy league, like more and more teams are like going back and forth, trading. You know, like imagine like a Sorokin, you know, barely plays compared to UC Saros. Like, there's not too many volume guys. And Saros, I think it's like Saros and Shesterkin to me are like the two. And Vasilevsky, of course. They are like the three goalies that play almost every game and put up amazing numbers when they play. And yeah, I'm gonna pick Saros. But is that who you went with, or did you go with the skater?
So I was really between I was between a player at 3 different positions, and you named 2 of them. You named Saros, who has been incredibly reliable. I'll quibble for a second and say that Nashville, like you said, is a really good team. I'm not sure that Nashville is a really good team. I will say that they have been a very good defensive team, a top 10 defensive team, to the point that, yes, I'm not going to take anything away from UC Saros, and he's been incredibly valuable in fantasy, which is what this all-star team is about, because he does start every game. Like, there are a few goalies in the league that you can just count on being trotted out every single night, where, like you said, the backup isn't even worth looking at. But UC Saros, if you're measuring goalie performance this season by performance, like save percentage above expected at 5-on-5, which is my favorite metric, he falls outside of the top 20 goalies. Can you believe that? Like, that's just to say that his own individual performance hasn't been far and above what we could expect an average NHL goalie to have done in his spot. But I also think that UC Saros is probably still doing above and beyond what an average NHL goalie will be doing in his place. Maybe it has something to do with his stamina that we need to give him a little extra credit for because of all the minutes he's seen. In fact, nobody has appeared in more games or played more minutes this season than UC Saros. Or actually, I think Tristan Jarry has played like 50 more minutes in fewer games somehow. So all credit to UC Saros, but I want to give some credit to the Nashville defense for doing a really great job of keeping it locked in front of him. So that's like a team effort, but super valuable in fantasy. Kyle Connor, we talked about earlier this season, and we sort of like just left it there. Like, Kyle Connor has found a new gear. He is potentially top round talent, as I mentioned at the front of the show. Like, of all the players we've mentioned so far, he probably is the player who might have the most upward mobility into drafts next season. And then the defense in round 4 that I was looking at was Chris Letang. I kind of just want to take a moment to appreciate what he's doing too. Just like Roman Josi, at 34 years old, Chris Letang is putting up an 80-point pace. That would be the second highest point total of his career if it holds. And this comes after pacing for, about 70 points, 60 points, 70 points, 50 points over his last 4 seasons. So this is a nice little step up from what he's done before. How's he doing it? Well, he's played an extra minute a night at 5-on-5, which has helped him contribute there. But really, the big story here is on the power play, where Letang is cashing in more than he has before. And I think there's an okay chance that he keeps doing that. So if you drafted Letang hoping, settling for like a 60-point pace, then you're laughing, because you're getting a lot better than that. I will also mention, and I'm afraid to do it, so I think I might just whisper that Chris Letang, he's played in 42 of 46 games so far this season. In the COVID season, where everybody has missed at least 4 games, Chris Letang hasn't missed very many. So I hope that keeps up and continues for everybody's sake, including Chris Letang's. But I wanted to shout him out. Elon, I think I'm gonna go with you know what? I'm gonna put Saros/Connor, and then at the end of the show, I'm gonna take the guy whose position we need to fill the team to be on the all-star team. The no-star team from this round is really easy, though, right? There's just one guy sticks out like a sore thumb. Sort of like a sore thumb, because he was picked right before Tyson Barrie, who's like sticking out like a sore index finger. Is that smaller than a sore thumb? Less noticeable. But Jeff Petrie has had a bad year, to the point that he's now being accused of playing badly intentionally to force his way out of Montreal, which, as I think we've talked about before, it doesn't seem like a good way to force your way out of Montreal, by tanking your own trade value.
Wait, who's saying this? I haven't heard this before. This is a crazy take.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't think it's like a mainstream take. I just have come across it in a couple corners of Twitter that, are usually best unexplored. So consider yourself lucky that you haven't seen this take yet. But yes, the Montreal fan base is turning on him hard.
So what's our lesson here? Last season, he had 42 points in 55 games. Then it was announced that Shea Weber wasn't going to come back. And I think a lot of people thought, wow, that's going to even be a better situation for Jeff Petrie, because now he's going to have all the power play time he wants, which turned out not to be the case. He actually is getting the lowest power play share he has had since he's been in Montreal. And he has 6 points in 37 games. Like, before that great 60-plus point pace season last year, the previous 3 seasons, he was a 40-plus point defenseman. Is it just the fact he's 34? I don't know, because Chris Letang is 34. He's just fine. I'm trying to figure out how we could have predicted this. I guess is it just rude to be like, look, you don't draft Jeff Petrie, someone who was never a high pedigree guy, so early in fantasy, because the wheels are going to fall off at some point? Or is it easy to say, with hindsight?
Yeah, I think that's easy to say with hindsight. I'm just trying to see where he was drafted on average in the Cupful. By the way, the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, kkupfl.com for more info. He was drafted, 100th overall in the season before this one, where, I guess everyone was still a little shy. But there seemed reason to be high on him. But Montreal has been worse than a lot of us saw coming. And I think maybe without Carey Price, he feels some of the extra burden that's had to be carried on the defensive end with essentially no goalie. Jake Allen has performed maybe admirably some of the time, but that's about as good as it's gotten. So I think that's put a ding into Jeff Petrie. But maybe that is something to consider, because we knew Price was missing time, I think, around the time these drafts were happening. So if a goalie is going missing, maybe the lesson is consider that it might impact their defense's ability to play offensively.
Interesting. I guess also we do have the fact that we had Patrick Kane in the first round as our no-star. Bad team, right? We had Elias Pettersson. Vancouver hasn't had a good season. Now you're Montreal. I wonder if maybe there's something to be said for wanting to have players on good teams, which I guess makes sense. But that'll be something to keep track of as we keep going through. We
definitely know that, but it is interesting that we thought these guys would all exceed whatever,
Well, yeah.
What's the persist, be resilient beyond however bad their teams would be.
Well, also, we didn't expect Montreal to be bad. They just came from the Cup finals. Maybe we expect them not to be a Cup finalist again. Yeah. But, remember when we were so excited about Cole Caulfield being a key like Calder candidate. So many other
Absolutely
guys, yeah.
nothing has worked out for Montreal this season, and Jeff Petrie has not worked out for his fantasy manager. So sorry to you. I don't blame you for doing it, but maybe the lesson is, I don't know, Elon. I think Jeff Petrie was draftable at that point, especially considering how quickly D were starting to go off the board. Like in round 4, there was a huge D run, right? And Jeff Petrie was taken just on the tail end, like I said, right before Tyson Barrie. So when you're panicking and you look at the rest of the defensemen that were on the board, it wasn't a bad move if you were looking for your last shot at a number 1 defense type, because Petrie had been reliable.
Yeah. What are you going to do? All right. So we've still got, that was the end of round 4, which means we still have 14 rounds to go. We're going to get to all of them in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson.
All right. Time to speed it up, huh?
Yeah. Okay. All right. We are back, Brian. Round 5 went as follows in the Tier 2 Ottawa Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patriot Fantasy League draft. Thomas Chabot, Darcy Kemper, Igor Shesterkin, Philip Forsberg, Alex Pietrangelo, Charlie McAvoy, David Perron, Brent Burns, Brian Rust, Kevin Fiala, Morgan Riley, Sean Couturier, Quinn Hughes, and Johnny Gaudreau. I feel like there's some names in here that are interesting just because I feel like at different times in the season there would have been different names. There's definitely a point where Kevin Fiala was looking like a huge bust, but he's turned it around in a huge way because of Matthew Boldy, in addition to Matthew Boldy. I don't know, but like whatever. Boldy's come up and now Fiala like can't go a game without a point. So obviously he's not going to be on the no-star team. As far as the all-stars go, I mean, Shesterkin is there. I already said how amazing he is. So, like, to me, I'm going to put him, like, I'll copy you, right? I think we should just do him and a skater, and then we can decide which goalies we want to put in at the end. Because Shesterkin's been amazing. And, like, if you could have taken him here instead of Saros in a round before, I guess it's better off getting Shesterkin since I like them both pretty similarly. I think that my star is going to have to be, and I'm really surprised about this, but Brian Rust has just been like too amazing to not bring up, like a 5th round. And we're talking like among some really big names here, but Rust is at 32 points in 24 games. Is that right? He's having an insane season.
He's having a 100 plus point pace for Brian Rust.
So how do you decide? The goalie that I think is the front runner for the Vezina in Shesterkin, or Brian Rust, who hasn't played that many? Okay, I'm going to give it to Shesterkin just because I'm not only doing this based on like who's been the best so far. I'm also doing this based on like just who was the best pick, I think. Also thinking of like who I'd want moving forward. And I would still take Shesterkin, even though I'm not to discredit Brian Rust here, but I think it's more likely that Shesterkin continues a Vezina season than Rust continuing a 100-point pace.
Credit to both of these guys for keeping Philip Forsberg at a 94-point pace as a 5th round pick off, like out of the discussion to this point. Forsberg's also benefited from that increasingly hot Nashville power play and is actually like super hot right now. 4 straight multi-point outings coming into the All-Star break. But he actually strikes me, and the reason I just wanted to bring him up here is because he strikes me as someone who might be a pretty decent sell-high candidate going into the second half of the season, because his ice time is actually taking a step back this year after we saw it rise finally last year, and we were all excited about it. Finally, Philip Forsberg getting like line 1 minutes, and then like, actually, we're going to dial those back a little bit again. But Forsberg is covered for that by shooting 25% in all situations, 27% at 5-on-5, which has given him 24 goals in 33 games. This is a guy who's like, a 30, 35 goal scorer, but right now he's pacing for like 55 or 60 goals. And that is essentially the difference between the 94-point pace we're seeing now and the 70-ish point pace that we would have expected to see coming into the season. So if you have Philip Forsberg on your team, this is a good time to consider selling high on him. If we're looking to name our all-star, Elon, I'm going to go Igor Shesterkin too. I think Brian Rust has been amazing. He's continued to be great at 5-on-5 and is riding the super hot Pittsburgh power play. But unlike UC Saros, Igor Shesterkin, if you're looking at his performance above expected save percentage, Shesterkin's 3rd in the league. And he's behind Ville Husso, who's played half as many minutes, and Jonathan Quick, who's played about the same number of minutes and is just steadily falling in that measure after starting the season so strong. Igor Shesterkin is the reason the Rangers are where they are. He's like been an MVP, so I'm going to give him a little bonus bump because he plays for the fifth worst defense at 5-on-5 in the league. And that's why I'm going to name Igor Shesterkin as my round 5 all-star.
Okay, yeah. By the way, we are getting yelled at in the chat and for good reason by Patty. Like, we have to mention Johnny Gaudreau, who's maybe even better than Brian Rust, or very similar. Gaudreau has 54 points in 42 games. So it's like what Rust has done has been great, but it's been in a smaller sample size. Gaudreau is playing the full season, and he's pacing for above 100 points. And he was the last pick in the round. So, yeah, he's been amazing, and I don't see a reason to expect him to slow down, right? Calgary's really good, and they seem to be one of these teams that loads up their best players on the top line. They just put Gaudreau I know there was that one episode where we were talking about how they were shifting it around. It's basically Gaudreau, Tkachuk, and Lindholm, and they're also on the power play. And I don't know, like, is Gaudreau like a Forsberg, someone that you're looking to sell high on as well, or do you just like ride the good times?
That's the end of your okay.
And then after you answer, you could also say you're no star.
Yeah, great. No, I think Gaudreau's looking like legitimately good this year. Maybe a touch too good, but he's not somebody I would be eager to get out for, like to get out from and be like, oh, I got to sell high. He's up in a minute of ice time per night at 5-on-5 compared to last season. And he's shooting more dangerously than he has at any other point in his career. And it's showing in his goal tallies. He's earned a lot of those goals that he's scored, especially at 5-on-5. So I would not be like, if you're asking me who to sell first, who to sell high on, I'd sell high on Philip Forsberg. I wouldn't be feeling so compelled to sell high on Johnny Gaudreau. Like, if I wanted to, I could make an argument that, yeah, he's playing a little high, but I don't think you're going to get like great sell high value for him because I see a lot of what he's doing continuing through the rest of the season. As for my no star, I think I'm going to name Sean Couturier as the no star here. And I know we were going to give a pass to players who have been injured, but Sean Couturier, even when healthy, was not having a good season along with the rest of Philadelphia. And now he's missed the last little bit where there are Philadelphia Flyers actually producing. His points per 60 rates were like cut in more than like down by more than half. His shooting percentage was down by more than half. His points participation rates fell 30% from 75% to 45%. So look, this is a lot of bad variance for Sean Couturier, but it's been really frustrating to hold him as the guy who picked him in this round. And so for that reason, I don't know, Elon, maybe this is emotion clouding me, but I feel the need to name Sean Couturier to the no-star team because he's certainly been a no-star for me.
I mean, to be fair, there's not like too many other options of players that have been like especially bad. Like David Perron's really slowed down recently. So I think it would be between those two, but everyone else in this round has been pretty solid. So I think Couturier is a very fair pick here. Let's go to round 6 now, and here's how it went. It's another round just like the last one where I thought Brian Rust really stood out as like the best player in the round. There's a name here that maybe I need to start getting used to the fact that he really is maybe the best player in this round. See if you can pick it out as a listener here. So there's Marchessault, Rupe Hintz, Neil Pionk, Ryan O'Reilly, Jack Eichel, Zach Hyman, Blake Wheeler, Matthew Barzal, Brock Besser, Anze Kopitar, Taylor Hall, Zach Werenski, William Nylander, and Patrick Laine. So that was round 6. To me, the player who's jumping out is Rupe Hintz. Like, he's awesome. That line on Dallas, Hintz, Pavelski, and Robertson, it's all of a sudden like become like one of the best lines in the league. Like, it just like, you know, this Tim Hortons hockey challenge that you roped me into, and now I'm like into myself, where we chat on our Discord about which player is going to score a goal. It's like, for me, it's like whenever Pavelski or like Robertson or Hintz show up, I just like always want to take them, and because they just like Hintz has 20 goals in 41 games. He has a goal in every second game. He might be like the third best player on the line, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't a great value pick in this round. 37 points in 41 games, 74-point pace. It's nice that he's playing every game as opposed to last year where he was day to day or like game time decision all the time. So yeah, he's my star pick here. Do you agree?
I agree. Rubens is also my all-star from round, what are we in, 6? And I think along with Kyle Connor, I'm going to put him in that sort of class as having the best chance of rising towards like next draft season for his ADP going up. Also, shout out to William Nylander, who is hard to ignore here too. But Rupe Hintz.
But
What?
I want to do a shout out to I want to do a shout at William Nylander because what is happening? Like all of a sudden, the Leafs are scoring 1 million goals every single game. I don't know. I know it's just been like the last week or so, but it's really frustrating when they score like 7 goals against New Jersey like twice in a row, and he doesn't get any points. I see he has an assist today against Carolina.
Who had no points on like those 15 Leaf goals?
Who? Nylander, but someone else?
No, I feel like he had 1 or 2. John Tavares had absolutely zilch, none. So that's
I think it was the same. Yeah, I guess they're on the same line, so I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, but let me focus on Rupe Hintz.
Okay, yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he's really good. He's hit a new gear this season. It's funny because we've mentioned Dallas is a place where offense goes to die, and we've said the same about Montreal. And we're excited about them loading up a top line. Dallas, though, has gone ahead and done that with that Hintz, Pavelski, and Robertson line. The one extremely frustrating thing about it is Rupe Hintz is playing just 12 and a half minutes a night at 5-on-5, which means that right now he's pacing for like 74 points over 82 games. But he's playing like second, even third line minutes. I said how we've always complained about Forsberg's ice time. Forsberg has never played as few minutes a night at 5-on-5 as Rupe Hintz is this season. So even though Dallas is leaning hard on that top line for their scoring, I think he has more to give at 5-on-5. And he has, like I said, shown that he's stepped up his game from last season too, whether that's, growth or health, I'm not sure. But at 25 years old, Rupe Hintz is crushing it and is absolutely my round 6 all-star from this group. I think he's definitely worked himself into being like an automatic, where I think over the last couple of years is like, oh, will he or won't he? Rupe Hintz is someone you can rely on.
Yeah, I guess the next big question will be when Pavelski is not around. Pavelski's a UFA at the end of the season. So imagine if he's not there, then it'll be interesting to try to project, Hintz and also Robertson. Not to say that they're not great players, but clearly Pavelski's been a key part. He's the center of the line. Okay, so Brian, now we got to pick a no-star on this round. It's between 3 guys for me. Ryan O'Reilly has been a huge disappointment, right? Like he only has... he's not been terrible, but he only has 29 points in 40 games, which is way down from, I think, what people expected. He was like drafted really high in this round. Hasn't paid off. Neil Pionk, who you picked, 3rd in the round. We've already talked about him a bunch on the show. Only 18 points in 39 games. The peripherals aren't as high. Like, I don't know. He's just been kind of a bust. And then I guess like Taylor Hall was in that conversation until like Pasternak joined his line and kind of revitalized his season. So yeah, it was a tough one for me. I think I'm going to lean Ryan O'Reilly just because I'm going to give Neil Pionk the pass for being the defenseman, so you get at least some value there. But Ryan O'Reilly as a center this high, I was expecting a lot more.
Yes, and we did talk about this on our false start for this week's episode, which is why you're hearing it a day late due to the technical troubles. But we did field some questions on our YouTube channel about how the Blues are doing and rank the forwards. And one conclusion we came to was that there's just a lot more of the wealth being shared around in St. Louis. Like Ryan O'Reilly is not playing poorly. I would say David Perron is also not playing poorly. I would say there's just more depth, and they don't need to lean on a top line or even a top 6 the way they did in St. Louis. And of course, that has taken away from Ryan O'Reilly's fantasy value. So there's nothing wrong here, which actually might be frustrating news for anybody who has Ryan O'Reilly on their roster, because it's like, yeah, this is probably going to continue the rest of the season because he doesn't need to be that 70, 80 point player that he had been in the past, especially during those cup run days. I guess, yeah. So that I had Taylor Hall as being my no star here because I think even though things are going well for him right now, I don't think it forgives like the 80% of the first half of the season that he wasn't doing anything. Like even with recent success, Taylor Hall's on a 55 point pace, and Elon, like he had a good run, but I'm actually just looking at his game log now. He has pointed just once in his last 4 games, and he's been playing on the top power play. So I'm actually feeling pretty comfortable giving the title to Taylor Hall, because I think Ryan O'Reilly is at least doing something that keeps you from thinking, should I drop this guy? Whereas Taylor Hall, I don't think is doing that. The other name here, by the way, is Jack Eichel, which the answer for whether he's a no star for you personally or not is whether or not, like now that I saw today, he's out of the no contact jersey. So he's full practice now. If you're in comfortable playoff position and you've been holding him all year, congratulations. You nailed that Eichel pick. If you're not, then maybe he's your no star. Maybe you blew it by picking him a little early in round 6. I can tell you the team in my couple division that picked Eichel in round 6 is fighting for their playoff life and will be over the last several weeks of the season. So I wish them all the best. And I liked the swing. I thought it was a good time, but I think we at least need to acknowledge that. But I'm going to put Taylor Hall on my no star team. Did I convince you at all?
Yeah, I'm convinced. Taylor Hall sounds good. He's been a dud. He was dropped also in my couple division. I think that should be if you're dropped in tier 1 and you were picked in like the top 10 rounds, maybe that should be like you're automatically included on this list, even if you've turned around a little bit lately. And yeah, well, hey, this person that you're saying is fighting for their playoff life. If they're going to get Taylor Hall, or if they're going to get Jack Eichel back, that's probably going to help in that fight. So it may turn out to work out well in the end, and it'll be a sleeper pick to maybe win the whole division. Okay, so let's go now to round 7 of the Tier 2 Ottawa draft, and it went as follows: Evgeny Malkin, Teuvo Teravainen, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Jordan Binnington, Torrey Krug, Tomas Hertl, Sam Reinhart, Drew Doughty, Vincent Trocheck, Mark Giordano, Tyler Toffoli, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Jason Robertson, Ryan Pulock. So this is we're getting into now the point where there's multiple duds. Like there's a lot of names that are jumping out at me. I'm just going to throw it out there right now that while Bjorkstrand, has been disappointing, and I know that Ryan Pulock has been like maybe like the most like super disappointing himself. Like I think that the answer has to be Jordan Binnington here. He's currently a free agent in tier 1 of the Cupful, and he's been like that for a while. No one's jumped on him. I think it's still definitely possible that after the All-Star break he gets more run, but it's like he's been bad when he's played, and now he seems to have lost the net at least temporarily to Ville Husso. So as a pick in the 7th round where you're trying to get your like solid, reliable starting goalie, like people pick Binnington, not even expecting like the most sterling numbers, but at least like consistent starts, a sure starter on the team. It's kind of evaporated. So to me, he's the clear no star. And then my all-star is going to just kind of repeat what I said in round 6. Just take everything I said about Rupe Hintz, throw it on Jason Robertson, his line mate, who I guess is an even better pick because it was around later. I know he was injured, missed a couple games, and actually Hintz really stunk at the start of the season. I wonder if it was like Robertson hurt, which is what caused both Pavelski and Hintz to have such slow starts to the year. But as soon as Robertson showed up, just everything turned around. So if you got him in the 7th round, you were laughing, especially because you were able to stash him in IR and try out some other players, maybe get like a Lucas Raymond at a free agency early on instead of having to hold on to someone. So to me, it's pretty obvious. Robertson is the star. Binnington is the no star. I'll be interested to hear if you have a different opinion. I have a feeling you won't.
No, Robertson is definitely the all-star from the round 7, which saw, like I was looking at the draft and trying to figure out why there were so many bad defensemen picked this round. And this is like, a last gasp at a deep run here where I think people were trying to find like a value second defenseman or maybe already building their third. But Krug, 5th in the round, Giordano, 10th in the round, and Pulock, 14th in the round, all stand out as unfortunate picks that have been frustrating. Krug less so than the other two. Elon, I'll be honest, I didn't have Binnington on my list, but I know he's burnt you hard. And
he burned me hard in one league, but he burnt someone else hard in tier 1 of the couple who dropped him. I mean, if you have a player that was dropped again, like to me, like none of these other players, even Pulock hasn't been dropped in any of the leagues I'm in. But
you could pop him on IR, and Krug hasn't been dropped, and Giordano may or may not.
By the way, can I give some kudos to Giordano because he was dropped in tier 1 of the couple at one point, and for a decent reason. Like he had a really slow start to the year. I added him, and he's become like a fixture on my team. He's been great actually. He has 6 points in his last 8 games. The peripherals have picked up. The shots on goal have picked up. So for anyone who gave up on Giordano, you gave a gift to someone else because I think he's going to be a solid piece rest of the year. I'm not expecting 6 points every 8 games, but I think at this point, he's definitely not a no star. I think he's really turned things around.
I feel like this round overall has been like a lot of disappointments. Like you have Malkin, who maybe came back later than you would have thought. You have Trocheck, who didn't get the deployment we'd hoped. Bjorkstrand, Foley. Anyway, we're not naming the mild disappointments. We're naming the big ones. I'll go with you on Binnington to be the add to the no-star team. But yeah, I feel like round 7 is where defense petered out here. And it really got dicey as people tried to grab like the last proven players. So for me, one lesson here is that maybe in the first 6 rounds is where I want to try and grab my top 2 defensemen.
Yeah. I'm really like, I'm going to be interested. If I have like 5th overall next year in Cupful, it might be hard, or maybe not 5th, like 7th, you know, like Cale Makar just becomes more and more appealing as it becomes like so hard to
Which is funny because coming into this season, we were just sort of moving off the strategy that we sort of, I think we had been big on for a while, which is grab your number 1D early on, like use that first pick if you need to grab your top defenseman. And then we're like, oh, there's a bunch of top defensemen now. You don't really have to. And I still kind of think that way. Like Cale Makar would be great, but hey, if I get Adam Fox in the 3rd round again, or Roman Josi, John Carlson, I'm not mad about it. But I think you need to get someone early.
Yeah, you're not mad about that, but what if you grab a Jeff Petrie or grab a Jacob Chikrin and you'll be fine? You don't need to grab Cale Makar early. Like, I feel like there's been a lot more grenades with these early defenseman picks that makes me scared, that just like give me the sure thing. Like the top power play guy in Colorado, there's like, I'll sell my house. I don't know what like there's no way Cale Makar falls off next year. I mean, whatever. I guess I could imagine a scenario. Now I could talk myself into a scenario where like Bowen Byram takes over and like whatever. But you know what I mean? Like it just seems like such a sure thing as opposed to
if you look at Petrie and Chikrin, they're both on bad teams, and that like Chikrin somehow got bumped off the top power play, which we definitely didn't see coming. But maybe that's the lesson here, Elon, is if you're investing big in defense, avoid the players who are on like poor offensive teams.
Yeah, which is Ryan Pulock, by the way, in this round. Has been a total dud this year. We'll see how he does now back from injury. Okay, round 8. We've got defenseman Rasmus Dahlin, who definitely would have been a better pick than Ryan Pulock, but it was by the same team, actually, at the turn. So Rasmus Dahlin, Connor Garland, Ryan Ellis. Oh, well, that's a dud, but he's missed time, so I don't know. Well, I'll just give him a pass. Marc-Andre Fleury. I'm not going to give a pass to Philly, though. That was a bad acquisition, potentially, because he's clearly has an injury history. Okay, so let me start this over. Dahlin, Garland, Ellis, Marc-Andre Fleury, Sam Bennett, Alex Radulov, Bo Horvat, Ivan Provorov, Nick Suzuki, Claude Giroux, Cole Caulfield, Ryan Strome, Jacob Markstrom, and then Jack Hughes at the end of the round. Yeah, it's Jack Hughes, right? As the best pick.
It's Jack Hughes. We were also talking about this on our false start. If you want to see it, it's on our YouTube channel, Keeping Karlsson on YouTube. You can probably find your way there. But yeah, Jack Hughes looks like a point per game superstar. There's nothing wrong with anything in his numbers. It's pretty exciting, especially because he's playing with 2 guys who weren't drafted in most, if any, leagues, Igor Sharangovich and Jesper Bratt. And he has succeeded with both of them. And that's not to say he is the reason that they're good this year, because I think Bratt is legit good. And I think Sharangovich is a solid complementary player. But it just speaks to how amazing Jack Hughes is that both of those guys are doing as well as they have been. Of course, I'm really bummed that it came without Thomas Tatar on the wing, if we really want to go back to think about how we were feeling at the start of the season. But Jack Hughes is clearly the all-star of this group. Shout out to Jacob Markstrom, who had 5 shutouts in his first 7 games or something crazy like that. And Marc-Andre Fleury, who we said, like, we left Marc-Andre Fleury for dead earlier this season. We actually, maybe one of the worst pieces of advice we've ever given on the show was that you could drop Marc-Andre Fleury after the start that Chicago was having. He still hasn't been awesome. In fact, he's actually played poorly this season, worse than Jordan Binnington, if you're looking at performance relative to expected save percentage. Just above Martin Jones is Marc-Andre Fleury, 44th out of 58 goalies who have played, at least 15 games or so. And he's down below Aiden Hill, Vejmelka, Koskinen, Binnington, Montembeault, Aaron Dell.
Yeah, but this is for the whole season, right? When you're giving these numbers. Fleury was like a different goalie. Like I'll bet you if you throw out the first like 10 games, after that, he's probably so much higher.
I don't know about so much higher, but he's higher for sure. Like I'm good to go there. But that I just want to at least call us out for having said that. So Flurry, good job. Sam Bennett's been great. Markstrom's been great. Some huge wins in round 8. Lots of booms and a couple busts, including, I'll say the biggest bust here was Alex Radulov.
Oh yeah.
He and Cole Caulfield are the two contenders here, and honestly, I don't really have a way to choose between them, except that at least Cole Caulfield has been injured in NA a lot this season. So if you could stash him, it's not quite as painful. But Radulov has given you no such luxury. He's just been bad night in, night out, and has no daylight ahead of him for being a productive NHLer, which is so frustrating.
Yeah, Radulov is completely done. Just forget about him for fantasy, probably forever. Cole Caulfield, we'll see next year. I'm sure he still has a future ahead of him. So yeah, I'll give it to Radulov, especially since he was picked a little bit earlier. And yeah, Jacob Markstrom, the lesson with these goalies is that they're really hard to predict, right? I think you definitely want to get a good starting goalie or two early, but good luck picking it, right? Markstrom or Binnington went higher. Markstrom's clearly the better pick. Next year it might flip. I don't know, but Markstrom is that was a really awesome pick, getting Markstrom so late in this round after so many goalies had already been off the board.
And then the next round, in the next couple rounds, I'll just spoil it. You had Demko, you had Freddie Anderson, you had Cam Talbot. There's at least one great goalie gem around for the next few rounds. Then over in round 13, we're in round 8 right now. There are 3 season-making goalies who were taken off the board. So like you said, Elon, it's you want to make sure to get your goalie. I don't know how you, I don't know that there is an actual strategic play aside from going ahead and drafting Vasilevsky or Shesterkin and with one of your first 2 picks. I'm not sure how you really do that.
Yeah, well, I guess we did more goalies board. I guess we'll go back and listen to it and see how we did. I've always been a little bit iffy on Binnington for what it's worth, but I don't know. I don't know if that counts for much. All right, next up, let's go to round 9 here. So yeah, Demko started the round. Great pick, even though Vancouver hasn't been great, but he plays a lot. He's clearly a really good goalie. He'll be even better once Vancouver figures things out. But okay, went Demko, Larkin, Tarasenko, Klingberg, Shen, Dominic Kubalik, Timo Meier, Joe Pavelski, Mackenzie Weegar, Tony DeAngelo, Anders Lee, Carter Verhaeghe, Linus Allmark, and Jakub Vrana. So this round has some huge hits, right? Is this round 9? I can't believe Pavelski, Meier, Tarasenko, even Larkin. Wow, that's and Tony DeAngelo, by the way, who scored again today, has just been such a big surprise. What a great value pick on D. Brian, you were talking before 2 rounds ago how it felt like D was over and people were having to reach and grabbing your Ryan Pulock or whatever. Little did they know that Ricard was going to grab Tony DeAngelo in round 9 and have one of the, I won't say one of the top goalies, but definitely a top tier goalie, good solid second goalie on your fantasy team. But I think the pick has got to be, it's tough. Pavelski's been amazing, but do I really do 3? Do we do 3 Dallas, the whole top line? Or do you go Timo Meier? To me, it's between Pavelski and Timo Meier for the pick here. So I'm just going to let you pick it.
Okay. And I'm going to go with Timo Meier, who has just had an amazing season. And I thought for sure, he's on a 94-point pace. He's seeing 2 more minutes of ice than he was last season. And of course, on the top power play with 8 power play points in 41 games, which actually isn't that impressive. This is Timo Meier in a nutshell. It's yeah, he has a 94-point pace, and that's without the top line power play production that we would like to see from him. So there's actually room for him to do a little bit better. But I was expecting, when looking at Timo Meier's numbers, to find at least one flag that what he's doing is unsustainable. And honestly, I can't. He has gotten better this year. He's taken more shots. He's taking more shots from better places. I think it does definitely help that the team around him seems to have figured things out a little better than they had last season. But Timo Meier right now has one of the highest on-ice expected goals rates in the league. I said Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane is averaging 2 expected goals per 60 minutes. That's what Chicago's doing when Patrick Kane is on the ice. Timo Meier on the ice, the Sharks are averaging 3.5 expected goals per 60 minutes, and that's huge. They're actually scoring 4 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, which is huger. But Timo Meier looking legitimate, like a 94-point player. And if that power play production steps up just a little bit, he's a legit look for a 100-point player which it makes me so happy to say, right? Because we've been watching Meier for years. Last year, he paced for just 47 points. It was a huge disappointment after a couple seasons where he had 70 and 60-point paces. We've just waited for him to get this top power play deployment. But not only has he taken that and used it to his advantage, but he's also stepped up his 5-on-5 game by a long shot. So that's why Timo Meier is my all-star out of this crop. Yeah, Demko, Tarasenko, Pavelski, D'Angelo. Timo Meier is my boom. The big boom. I'll call him my all-star. And then my bust is between Elon. I chose the all-star, so you choose the no-star. The no-star candidates here are Dominic Kubalik on that terrible Chicago team, and Anders Lee, who continues to just not look like his former self, who was capable of scoring goals, even in the context of being on the Islanders and how we decrease our offensive expectations there. Still, Anders Lee is looking worse than I thought he should, to the point that, yeah, he's on my short list for a no-star here.
Yeah, he's a reasonable shortlister, but it's got to be Kubalik, right? Like, he's just a free agent all over. The only time I see him rostered is when Chicago has a good scheduled. He's like not even a top sixer. I think he's down in the bottom six. At least Anders Lee, you can still have faith that he'll be able to get points on a given night since he's in a good spot, gets power play time. Yeah, he's not producing, but like Kubalik's not even really being given a chance. So to me, like, he was a huge dud. I wonder what happens with Kubalik like moving forward in his career. Like, he had this like really promising start, 46 points in 68 games to start his career. Then last year he was like pretty similar, right? 38 points in 56 games. So 2 straight seasons around a 55-point pace. Obviously that first season, it was like nothing and then exploding. Second season was just like a solid, consistent 55-point guy. And now he's become a nobody. But again, like you said, Chicago's been a train wreck. Another reason probably why Patrick Kane is not producing as much. Like, remember when Kubalik was like a key part of that power play? Now I don't even think Kubalik is on the power play. So, yeah.
You know who Kubalik is not a no-star for? The Yahoo Plus suggestion, as Shams is pointing out in the chat, that the only time Shams sees Dominic Kubalik is when Yahoo Plus wants me to add him. Kubalik and Vetrano are like the stars of Yahoo's eyes. So don't go there.
As soon as I added Matthew Boldy, I think an alarm went off in Yahoo's office. Like, wait, tell him to swap for Kubalik. What is he doing, this moron? Every day. It's like, why do you have Boldy? He wasn't even ranked. Kubalik, we ranked high.
So that's round 9. Dominic, on to round 10. Elon, I've got a couple top-end candidates here. You've got Jacob Trouba, who's been really great.
We should probably say the list, right?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was just jumping into it. Okay, I'll read the list this time. How about that? So starting at the top of round 10, we ended with Jacob Vrana being picked at the end of round 9. So starting round 10, Heiskanen, Buchnevich, Jonathan Toews, Freddie Anderson, Andrei Burakovsky, Carter Hart, Travis Konechny, Jared McCann, Victor Arvidsson, Nicholas Backstrom, Cal Peterson, Martin Nichas, Drake Batherson, and Jacob Trouba. How about the end of round 10 there with Batherson and Trouba going back to back almost in the 11th round? And both of them could be the all-stars of round 10. In fact, I am going to go ahead and anoint Drake Batherson the all-star of round 10. I remember, thinking going into the season, 55, 60-point pace could be good. There's some chance of higher upside, but not huge. And then here he is on a 90-point pace with 34 points in 31 games, and a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it, looking nice and sustainable, playing a huge role in Ottawa. 2.5 minutes more a night, at 5-on-5. Pretty much all of that extra time is coming for Drake Batherson. And he just took a huge step forward in his age 23 season. So way to go, Drake Batherson, for being on a 90-point pace. You don't find that in round 10 and beyond. In fact, you find some duds like Jonathan Toews, who to this point has the worst average cupful points per game of all the players we've mentioned in the first 10 rounds. And actually, of all the players drafted up until the 13th round, Jonathan Toews has the worst season-long average fantasy points per game. So congrats to me for being the dummy that took Jonathan Toews. And man, I felt excited about it. I actually took Toews in several leagues this year thinking, this is going to be good. and it wasn't. So shame on me. So all-star Batherson, no star Taves. Honorable mention to Freddie Anderson. I already mentioned Jacob Trouba, who's been great, but Freddie Anderson, I'm going to continue that list of goalies playing above their expectation at 5-on-5. Ville Husso, Jonathan Quick, Igor Shesterkin. Remember that list? Freddie Anderson right there. And as a workhorse in Carolina too, which we weren't sure was going to happen, although we sort of had an inkling that Raanta wouldn't stay healthy, but we also didn't know Anderson could stay healthy. To his credit, he has, and he has played brilliantly, some of the best hockey of his career. So Freddie Anderson was a great get in the 10th round, but I'm going to add Drake Batherson to the All-Star team.
I mean, yeah, it's a good pick, except like there is the elephant in the room. Like Batherson is injured now for a while, so it was a great pick up until now when you had some really bad luck by the name of Aaron Dell. The news came out today that Batherson might actually come back in April. Apparently, he's already off his walking boot or whatever. So if he was dropped in your league and you've got some room in your IR and you're looking like you're going to be good to make it to the fantasy playoffs, there's a free Brian Com All-Star that you can add and have ready for you. So definitely check out if he's available. I don't know. It's hard not for me to take Freddie Anderson with how he's been like one of the top goalies here, and he's also like still healthy and going. Like, I'm really impressed with him.
But we're not digging for injury, so assume Batherson's still playing.
Yeah. Well, anyways, my pick would be Freddie Anderson. I don't know.
Okay. All right.
And then the no star.
I'll do the slash thing for goalie / skater.
And also Trouba has been like such again back to the conversation about defense. Like all of these guys, like a bunch of these guys we've talked about, like Trouba, and especially in the cupful with all the peripherals, he's averaging over 5 cupful points per game, which is like that's great for a huge forward. That's like for a defenseman that's out of this world. That's better than Tony DeAngelo, who's like a point per game player in real life. Okay, the no star in this round, I went with Necas. It's actually a pretty solid round. Like, I don't think there's any real duds here.
Jonathan Taves, Elon.
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. Jonathan Taves, I just missed him. Oh, yeah. Okay. When I looked through the first time, I guess I just I don't know, my eyes always, I'm used to seeing him in free agency and glossing over him. So I guess I did it when looking through this list. Yeah, you're right. After him, I think Martin Necas is interesting. He's also someone that I'm, by the way, going to predict is going to have a better second half than his first half. So I just want to throw it out there. I think that he's, I don't see why he can't be like similar to what he was last year. He has an assist today in the game against Toronto for what it's worth, and 4 shots. He had 3 shots in each of his last couple of games. So I don't know, it's just a hunch. I'm not going to dig too much into it. Yeah.
If Necas or Taves was if I had to pick one for the second half, it would be Necas. Frankly, if I had to pick anyone or Taves for the second half, it might be just about anybody.
Oh yeah, I definitely wasn't comparing him to Taves. Like without compared to Taves, Martin Necas is Jack Hughes, right? It's like apples and oranges. Okay, next round here, it went Cam Talbot to start, then Grubauer, Mike Smith. We got goalie run to start. Justin Falk, Mikhail Sergachev, Jared Spurgeon. So in a D run, TJ Oshie, Tristan Jarry. That was a really good pick for so late. Alec Martinez, Vince Dunn, Anthony Mantha, Eric Karlsson, Philip Hronik, and Josh Norris. So this round got really boring. Like the last round was all these exciting names.
Super boring. Yeah, there's been some huge breakout 80 or 90 point player in the last several rounds, in every round actually. And this round, not so much. I'm trying to justify Josh Norris or Eric Karlsson. Talbot and Jarry would both be decent choices, but there is no all-star in round 11.
I think Jarry has been really pleasant surprise, right? Especially this late to get a goalie who's played so many minutes and has been as solid as he's been. He's got a .923 save percentage. I think Jarry's the clear winner here. I want to say Eric Karlsson. Maybe if he didn't get injured, I don't know, but he's been having a great season, and I'm sad that he's hurt for a couple of months. I know you're saying I don't know, but anyways, with the injury on my mind, even if I'm not supposed to have it on my, it's like a jury, being don't pretend like you didn't hear that testimony. I'm striking that testimony. It's I heard it. I've never been on a jury. I'm assuming it would be hard, but anyway, Tristan Jarry is my pick here for the All-Star.
It's got to be Jarry or Karlsson, right? Karlsson's on his 65-point pace. Not all of it looking so sustainable, but the fact that we can feel like Eric Karlsson is better than the 45, 50-point defenseman we feared he'd be this year is cause to celebrate. So way to go, Eric Karlsson. But yeah, I think this is an easy round to take a goalie, which means, we can free ourselves up to take Kyle Connor over UC Saros in an earlier round.
Fair.
If we choose to do looking back. As for duds, as much as there were a lot of boring boring players who have turned out like okay. There weren't too many terrible players who've turned out just god awful. Vince Dunn, I think, was a shot maybe worth taking at this point in the draft, but he has just not panned out at all.
Yeah, he's my easy pick. He's the one that's in free agency in all my leagues.
Yeah, so there you go. 36-point pace, decidedly second power play time, not doing anything special at all, which is a shame because St. Louis constantly wanted him to run their power play for whatever reason. And in Seattle, clearly they don't feel the same way about Vince Dunn. So he is the no star from round 11, which brings us, Elon, to round 12.
All right, let's do it. So yeah, obviously now as we get to the later rounds, it makes more sense that we're going to have duds. Like you don't want to feel maybe round 12 is still too early, but we're getting to a point where like you should take some swings and it's fine to get a bad pick as long as you, again, replaced him with one of those awesome undrafted players that we were talking about before. But okay, round 12, we had Parayko, Dumba, Varlamov, Jake Muzzin, Brendan Gallagher, Chris Kreider, Jamie Benn, Tim Stutzla, Evgeny Kuznetsov, Jakub Voracek, Tom Wilson, Trevor Zegras, Devon Taves, and Andre Palat. Round out the round. To me, it's easy. It's between two players, Chris Kreider and Evgeny Kuznetsov. And as awesome as Kuznetsov has been all season, how can you not give it to the NHL's leading goal scorer going into the All-Star break? I know that Matthews has already scored 2 goals today. I'm not sure if that's enough to overtake him, but Kreider's just been insane, especially in the cupful. Like the reason why we put Matthews over McDavid was because we score goals as worth more than assists. And so I think that Chris Kreider's points per game even beat out Kuznetsov as great as he's been. So I think it's an easy pick here for me, at least. Chris Kreider as the star of the round here in round 12. What a pick.
Chris Kreider's game log just littered with goals. It's crazy. He hasn't gone more than 2 games without scoring a goal since a stretch between December 8th and December 15th. Since then, he has scored a goal, every game or every other game or a couple times after 2 games of going goalless. Now, we've talked about on the show how Chris Kreider actually, even though he looks as good as he has been and seems incredibly consistent at an 82-point pace, that he might be a strong sell high candidate because of all those goals Kreider scoring on the power play. 17 power play goals. That's of his total 33 goals altogether, but 17 power play goals have come thanks to a 43% power play shooting percentage. And yes, Chris Kreider is in a good spot on the power play to, put away the trash and be up close and have some really high percentage shots. But as we've said on the show, there's nowhere in the NHL where you can sustainably be shooting with 43% success. So that's why Chris Kreider is absolutely the all-star of this round. But if you are looking for another sell-high candidate, he would fit the bill as one. And then as for the no-stars, Brendan Gallagher has been super disappointing.
Terrible.
Jake Muzzin has also been unrosterable. I might even go Jake Muzzin as the no-star just because as low as our expectations were for Muzzin, he stopped doing anything of consequence. Cold turkey. It was very frustrating as somebody who invested in him in one league.
Oh, sorry.
So, so I got burned there. It wasn't in this one, but in another one for sure. Brendan Gallagher.
To me, it's Gallagher, to be honest. At least Muzzin gives you peripherals. Gallagher has been
Muzzin barely gives you peripherals this year, though. It's he stopped shooting. He's barely blocking. Neither of these guys are doing anything. They're equal no stars.
I guess it's a sad debate to have. Gallagher, though, also maybe is more disappointing just because he hadn't been below a 50-point pace for the past 4 seasons. And now this year. And last year, if you recall, in the playoffs, he totally disappeared. And it kind of seemed like Montreal was rolling this top line that was doing all the offense. And the other lines, I guess, were for cleanup or something. And now this year, I was a little bit worried about Gallagher. And it didn't turn out that Montreal had some super high scoring line. No one was scoring for a lot of the season. Now, actually, with Toffoli back, he and Suzuki are looking good together. But Gallagher, nothing. He's just disappeared. And Montreal just signed him. That's a crazy contract, right? Isn't he locked in for 6 years at $6.5 million per year? Yeah, that's not looking good right now.
Yeah, no, he got the contract to Chicago is not going to give to Dominic Kubalik when he becomes an RFA after this season. And also, Gallagher has a no movement clause in that contract, and he has a 6-team no trade list. Also, I mean, if you're gonna sign the guy, you got to use him to his strengths, which are, he can play high event hockey and he can be defensively responsible. And I don't feel like he's really been given the chance to strut his stuff this season for one reason or another. Montreal is just another one of those teams that's a disaster. Elon, I'm with you. I'm good to just name Gallagher the no start from round 12 and move on to round 13 where holy cow.
Wait,
what?
Speaking of holy cow, Brian, breaking news, not good news. Apparently, Austin Matthews is down in this game against Carolina.
Okay, how breaking is this? Like, has it happened like literally this second?
Wait, are you saying I shouldn't have interrupted you?
Well, I'm just saying, like, everything always looks bad in the exact moment it happens.
Well, I'll keep reading what people are saying in the chat here. Adams, a knee in the back of the head while down on the ice, skated on his own to the dressing room, straight to the room. He's down the tunnel. So yeah, I don't know. He's off the ice. He's down the tunnel. What can we say? I don't know. Concern. Maybe I shouldn't have interrupted you, but I found it very shocking and thought it was worth mentioning.
Well, in any case, okay, no, I'm saying on to round 13.
Let's do it.
Holy cow. Yeah, that's the holy cow. Like goalies who have made people seasons. Like I'll have to check the standings, but I'm pretty sure anyone who scored a goalie in this round is having a pretty nice season in this Cupful division. So round 13 from the top, Logan Couture, Nico Hischier, Sergei Bobrovsky, Rasmus Ristolainen, Carey Price, Jack Campbell, John Gibson, Sam Girard, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Matt Murray, Ilya Samsonov, Ilya Sorokin, Max Comtois, and Elvis Merzlikins. So huge goalie run in this round with some clear hits and misses. But how can you not give the all-star here? Well, I guess it's between Bobrovsky and Jack Campbell. I'm kind of like, neither guy was someone we were sure was going to carry the load all season long, that they, Bob had Knight nipping at his heels and Campbell had Mrazek in case he got injured, or maybe even nipping at his heels if he wasn't consistent. I'm not sure how to choose between these two guys as the all-star of the round, though, Elon. Pierre-Luc Dubois, by the way, I'll just give the honorable mention now. Strong season, looks good, looks really good. So way to go, Pierre-Luc Dubois. But if I can add one of these guys to my team, I'm definitely taking Bobrovsky or Campbell. Elon, can you help me decide?
Yeah, take Bobrovsky, because like the backup in Florida, Spencer Knight, has not worked out to be the challenge that we thought he would be. So Bobrovsky's really playing a huge bulk of the games. I think we've heard news, like obviously Mrazek was injured for a lot of the first half of the year, but we've heard news that Mrazek is scheduled to play a lot of games in the second half. They want to keep Campbell rested. So I think definitely moving forward, I would rather have Bobrovsky. Also Florida Toronto's really good too. But I think if I had to pick one, I would take Bobrovsky over Jack Campbell just because I expect more starts. And I think Florida, I don't know, I just really like Florida. I'm wearing a Florida hat, so I had to use that also as a tiebreaker.
Okay, I'm good with that. And then a no star here, I think, is super clearly Max Comtois, who has 6 points in 28 games, actually playing fewer minutes than he was last season. And people, liked Comtois for his hits. He has 46 hits in 28 games this season, which is not enough to roster if you're looking for someone to just contribute hits. I remember at the start of the season, a lot of people were high on him, and I'm not at all knocking that right now. I want to be super clear because we know he has potential for some big hit, big shot games, and it would be nice if the points came with that. But I remember asking at the start of the season, like, what's the hype when we were drafting? What's the hype around Comtois? Why is everyone so, like, can someone explain to me? Because I wasn't following, and like everyone made their case. And I was like, okay, like I'm still not 100% sure. But on an Anaheim team where so many players have taken off, and Comtois isn't one of them, I think he's the clear no star here. I don't think he's had one fantasy relevant stretch all season.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, when everyone was really taking off, he was out of the lineup, and by the time he came back, everyone had kind of slowed down. Brian, okay, now can I say it? Like, they're in OT, and Matthews is not on the ice. This is serious. People are probably freaking out right now. If you have Austin Matthews, you're screwed. We just named him the #1 All-Star in the first round. Good luck. I'm trying to think of a fantasy impact to throw out there. I'm just going to be skies falling here.
Okay, well, it's bad for Bunting.
Yeah, bad for Marner. Bad
except Marner can probably survive it.
Sure, I guess.
Who's it good for? Jason Spezza?
Yeah, maybe Spezza gets on the top power play. That always happens. Yeah, grab Jason Spezza for the next Leaf game. He seems to always do well when he gets on the top power play.
Maybe, like, I'm trying to look. Like, we always think of Toronto as being so stacked and full. But if you're looking for another centerman to step into a top 6 role, I don't know. Does Alex Kerfoot move up to play on the top line to center Marner and Bunting, which gives like a Andre Kasha or Mikheyev a chance to be on the Tavares Nylander line.
Maybe. Okay, so we'll have to see. Anyways.
Yeah.
But we got Ben and Lewis doing a show tomorrow for short shifts, so they'll cover it. By the way, Marner did just score an overtime goal, even without Matthews on the ice. Obviously, a 3-on-3 is not the same as. All right, let's keep up
the play-by-play on what there surely will be more news available on by the time this is released.
Brian, I thought I'm the director of content. You have to let me decide what we're going to talk about. Okay. Can I make another quick comment on round 13, even though we want to move on? But Matt Murray for the Sens, who is obviously goes a bust pick compared to some of these other guys you've talked about. 4 straight games now where he's had like a sterling save percentage. He's won 3 of those, lost 1 in OT. He just got the win today against New Jersey. We're definitely at a point where I think if Matt Murray's in your free agency, grab him. Like, He's on a hot run. He might be a volume goalie for the rest of the way. He might get injured the second you add him. But I'm at the point now where if he was available, I'm sad that I didn't add him in any of my leagues. Like, I feel like he's really gotten on a run, and who knows, maybe he's figured things out. I'm not saying I believe in him totally, but I'm saying that I would definitely take a shot on him if I needed a goalie, and even if not, I'd probably just grab him.
So. Yeah, he's in the same category. You talked about Craig Anderson on the show with Scott Cullen, and I think Matt Murray's in a similar category, except he does not have anyone challenging him. I mean, there is Anton Forsberg, who maybe the Sens will showcase to try and trade for like a 2nd or 3rd round pick towards the deadline. But Matt Murray, like, if he wants it, he can have it, whereas Craig Anderson has it until Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is healthy, at which point we'll see exactly how they manage things.
All right, round 14. Okay, went Oliver Ekman-Larsson, dud. Okay, Kasperi Kapanen, dud. Tomas Tatar, dud. Cam Atkinson, freaking amazing. Rickard Rakell, dud. Matthias Ekholm, dud. Blake Coleman, dud. Noah Hannafin, dud. Eli Tolvanen, dud. William Karlsson, dud. Jaden Schwartz, pretty much a dud. Now he's injured. Tyler Johnson, huge dud because everyone was so excited about him. JVR, dud. And Joel Farabee, dud. So this one's pretty easy. Cam Atkinson. Cam Atkinson is the only good pick in this round. And everyone else could be the no star. That's my take on round 14. So good job to. The problem is Filthy Animal might have dropped Cam Atkinson because he actually had a slow stretch. Like, I got him in free agency in tier 1 of the cupfuls. I don't even know if he's been held all season. But man, this guy just keeps it going. He's now got 5 points in his last 3 games. He's taken like all the shots that I love. It's like a 3-shot game. It's like a down game for Cam Atkinson lately because he's like 3 is the minimum. Then every once in a while he gives us a 4 or 5 or 6. He's having a great year. Like, he's the best.
He is. And I can confirm that Mike, who drafted him, has held him the entire season, which must have been painful at times. And to Mike's credit, he's in a pretty good spot in the league standings too. I'm just pulling them up. Yeah, Mike sits in a 3-way tie for 4th, with 4th, 5th, and 6th, a couple games up on the nearest playoff competitors. So way to go, Mike, for holding Atkinson. And yeah, just basically getting a free top end free agent once Atkinson has stepped up the way he has. We've talked, Elon, you've brought him up a lot, I think, every week on the show. And I'm like saying, yeah, more and more data saying he's actually going to keep doing the thing he's doing. And he is still doing the things he's doing. So way to go, Cam Atkinson, for being relevant. It is hard to pick a no star from this group, but I think it's pretty easy for me, actually. I'm just going to say Tyler Johnson. Nobody here has been as awful and as irrelevant all season long as Tyler Johnson.
And Tomas Tatar, I think. Like, Tyler Johnson at least got injured, so you were able to like get rid of him quickly. Tomas Tatar, you may have like held. Like, you drafted him, Brian. How long did you hold on to Tatar after you drafted him?
Oh, I can find out. Too long is the answer.
There you go. It's like, at least if you would have drafted Taijo, you could have moved on sooner.
Right. So, okay. You know what? I'm convinced. Let's see. I dropped Tatar 11 days. Oh, like, no, very early, October 16th. I drafted. That's because it's
New Year, New Brian.
That was New Year, New Brian. And then he was added by 2 other teams like in the next couple months. Yeah. So Tomas Tatar, I will make him the no star. There you go.
By the way, I was probably mean. Like, Blake Coleman is kind of turned it on lately. He's not a dud. I'm not saying like Blake Coleman was like an amazing pick, but
you were on a roll saying the word dud. It was feeling good. I appreciate what you needed to do.
Okay, round 15. Let's do this. I'm happy to see that Jesper Bratt was drafted. That was a good pick. I did Team Skugen end up holding on to Jesper Bratt? I can't imagine, right?
No.
I remember at one point I was recommending to you to add him out of your free agency. So obviously he wasn't held for very long, but he's probably the star. But let's go through this round here. So Kirby Dach, Jesper Bratt, Joel Eriksson Ek, Spencer Knight, Petr Mrazek, Mackenzie Blackwood, Clayton Keller. So, okay. Mike Hoffman, Marco Rossi. Well, okay. I'm not going to count Marco Rossi. He got sent to the minors. That was a swing. Okay. Patrick Hornqvist, Sean Monahan, Jordan Eberle, Philip Zadina, and Jamie Drysdale. Let me see what I wrote here. I wrote Bratt. I think it could be between Bratt and Clayton Keller. Like, who's your pick between the two?
I think I'm going to go with Bratt as the all-star, and it might not be as much for his fault. Like, I think Keller has been the more consistently performing player the whole way through, but I'm going to go with Bratt, if I'm compiling an all-star team, just because he's playing with Jack Hughes. So for fantasy purposes, that excites me. So it's not a totally fair way to decide who's on the all-star team. I actually kind of want to lean Keller, but I'll just go Bratt because I feel like you might give me a hard time otherwise.
No, it'll be fine. But I think rest of the season, I would probably. Well, the thing is, Clayton Keller takes more shots. I think they both deserve a spot. They were both like huge value. But the thing is, both of them also had slow stretches. They were both like good picks if you held on.
Yeah, they were definitely dropped, and that's a theme coming through a lot of these late rounds. Like there's I don't know, I didn't do the math, but there's got to be for anybody drafted round even 13 or 14 beyond, like 80% turnover for forwards. For defensemen and goalies, less so, but still plenty. So a lot of this is just about holding them, drafting them, and hoping they got out to a great start, or adding them at the right time. These are more like the free agent all-stars than the draft round all-stars. Yeah. So yeah, you've got Bratt standing out, and then as the no star, Bratt and Keller standing out as the all-stars, and then as the no star, I've got Zadina and Dach as the most disappointing players. Dach is easy. We essentially have the Chicago Blackhawks on our no-star team.
Yeah, Chicago and Montreal.
Yeah, so I don't know if I want to diversify and just say Zadina because of it, but Kirby Dach. You know what? I'm going to say Kirby Dach because there has been opportunity for a top-line center to step up and do something, and Kirby Dach has not answered that call. Whereas in Detroit, Zadina, if you're off the first line, then you're nowhere. So there's really not much for him to do.
Yeah, I think in terms of what was the worst pick of the round, if I was thinking of it in terms of that thing, which isn't exactly what we're saying, but I would give a pass for Zadina, Drysdale, Dach. You took a swing on a young player. One player that jumps out to me, I think is just interesting, is Sean Monahan, just by how far he's fallen in going from being a star fantasy asset. Just in 2018-19, he had 82 points in 78 games. Followed that up with only 48 points in 70. So that went down to a 56-point pace. Then last year, 46-point pace, and now he's on a 37-point pace. This is a guy at only 27 years old has how does this happen? It's not like he's been injured.
He's had a 15-year career trajectory happen in 4.
Yeah, he just went from a star to nothing.
I don't think he's a bad swing to take in round 15, sandwiched between Patrick Hornqvist and Jordan Eberle. I think it was worth checking him out and giving him a week, the same way it was, Tomas Tatar the round before, or Jesper Bratt earlier this round. But he's he'll go undrafted next season for sure. Another bad pick, by the way, that we can just mention, Spencer Knight. He did not, end up playing a whole lot in the first half of the season, and we don't expect to see him a whole lot more in the second half. But this is where we are in the draft, right? Everyone's taking swings, trying to hit those high upside picks. So congrats to everybody for shooting your shots. I'm going to keep Kirby Dach on the no-star team.
That's fine. I think at this point, honestly, the no-star team doesn't really matter anymore because it's late rounds. I think, but speaking of shooting your shot, there's someone who shot a shot in this round and hit big time. Woo. Let's see if you can catch the name as I go through here, okay? So the round started, round 16, with Alexis Lafreniere, then Alex Nedeljkovic, who actually isn't the player I'm thinking of, but he's been really good, especially considering you waited so long and you still get a starting goalie who's been solid. So that's a good pick. Okay, so Lafreniere, Nedeljkovic, Victor Olofsson, Nazem Kadri, Kako, Noah Dobson, Alex Killorn, Chandler Stevenson, Jack Roslovic, Casey Middlestat, Vasily Podkolzin, Igor Sharangovich, Anthony Cirelli, and Matt Grishlik. Did any name jump out from this list as being someone that was quite a steal in round 16?
I like your attempt at being casual about it. Like you were trying so hard to be casual that you weren't casual when you said Nazem Kadri, who, by the way, is someone I have drafted for years in fantasy. Like years. I always get him in the late rounds because no one ever feels that interested in him. And last year, after his 47-point pace campaign, which seemed too low, I thought I could sneak him later, and I couldn't. So congrats. That's another filthy animal pick by Mike. So way to go, Mike, for nabbing Nazem Kadri in round 16 of 18. That's super late in the draft. And that's a very easy all-star pick with a 120-point pace for Nazem Kadri, which, yes, is a little high, but he has held his spot on the top power play for a large part of the season, and he's making the most of it. This is something he did not have consistently last season, but he has it this year, and holy cow, is he destroying on the power play. He's pacing for 38 power play points this season, which means he's still pacing for 80 points off the power play, which is still incredible. And honestly, he's earned a lot of those points, also by virtue of playing the most minutes he's ever seen in his career, over 19 minutes a night, which is never seen more than 18 minutes a night on a regular basis. And that happened just one season in Toronto. Every other season was like between 16 and 17 minutes. So Nazem Kadri, huge season, huge win in round 16.
Yeah, here's the crazy thing. Now we're going to get to round 17. And, oh, wait, we have to do a no star. Whatever. There's a bunch of
No, we're going to skip. You're right. We're going to skip the no stars the rest of the way.
Remember when we were in round 11 and we read it through and it was like, this is all like kind of like boring people for the most part. We ended up picking Tristan Jarry ahead of Erik Karlsson. And like, yeah, Jarry was really good. You know, like all these players got picked in this round that were nothing special. Now we have round 16, Nazem Kadri. Check out round 17. There's a couple of names here that really jump out. So here are the picks. And then obviously a lot of duds. Nils Höglander, Keith Yandel, Jordan Kyrou, Riley Smith, Nick Ritchie, Jeff Carter, Jordan Stahl, Yanni Gourde, Matt Zuccarello, Anton Hudovin, Tyler Bertuzzi, Phil Kessel, Bowen Byram, Carter Hutton. I'm going to say right away, Carter Hutton is the no star, even though we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, we have to give Carter Hutton full credit for having a negative cupful fantasy point average points per game.
I just saw a tweet today that he's skating, like he was skating before an Arizona game. Can you imagine if he plays again?
That's great. I like, you know what? It would be such a sad note to end your NHL career on. And I feel like this happens for goalies, right? This is how goalie careers end. You get in the net, you can't do it anymore. You have one really bad start or a few really bad starts, whether you've played, 1,000 games as a goalie or you've played 10 games as a goalie. It's a really sad and undignified end to an NHL, like the achievement of having an NHL career. So I hope Hutton gets back in, has a couple good games, and can ride off into the sunset after that. But I am not counting on it. I would not stream him onto my roster for those games. So Carter Hutton is the clear no star here after we decided we're not naming no stars. There's no way to avoid Carter Hutton.
Yeah. Okay. But the star here is, I think, Zuccarello. And like definitely Bertuzzi's had an awesome year and Jordan Kyrou's had a really good year. But man, Zuccarello over a point per game. Like who had this on their bingo card, right? 42 points in 35 games. I'll say that again. Sorry, one sec. 42 points in 35 games for a guy that, like a couple seasons ago we were making fun of, or like a lot of people were making fun of as like being a really bad signing by, I think, Paul Fenton. Like, what are you thinking? Now all of a sudden, I wonder if Kaprizov like loves playing with Zuccarello. I don't know. Just like Zuccarello, it's hard to say like how much is just because he's playing with Kaprizov, but like it doesn't even matter for fantasy, right? Like he's been amazing, point per game. I don't see any reason why he won't keep it up. I think Kaprizov's going to be a 100+ point guy, and Zuccarello will be there like a 80-ish point guy, and just a huge steal for Jeeves here in round 17. But Tyler Bertuzzi also, by the way, we should say, because we were also worried about him. It's like a Tony DeAngelo light kind of, like, it was like we saw that Tyler Bertuzzi didn't want to get vaccinated, like, oh, he's not going to play in games in Canada, and like I think that's a big reason why he fell. He was also injured the year before, but don't look now, 40 points in 39 games, so he's basically pacing similar to Zuccarello. I think it's a coin flip, but they're both amazing picks in round 17.
Yeah, between Kadri and Zuccarello and Bertuzzi, and Kyrou's in there, but not on the same level as those guys, to find 3 point per game players in 2 of the final 3 rounds of the draft is Matt. Like that's, you don't win at the draft, but that's one way you can really help your chances of winning your league at the draft. So yeah, congrats to anybody who got Zuccarello that late. I think he was probably plucked out of free agency in more leagues than he was drafted in. And he is absolutely, if he gets stapled to Kaprizov, and why wouldn't he be? Which is bad news, by the way, for Joel Eriksson-Ek, who was drafted a few rounds before this. So way to even take that swing on Zuccarello, thinking maybe he was going to be the other wing on that top line. And sure enough, Zuccarello's there as the center in round 17, which brings us, Elon, to the final round of our Cupful Tier 2 Ottawa All-Star and No-Star draft. And one observation before you read the names is that it's funny. We've talked about how hard it was to find defensemen, and there are 3 in round 18 who have been rosterable more or less all season long.
Yeah, I guess it's just really tricky. Like when you think about draft strategy, so what's the takeaway then? You can wait, but also you want to get, I don't know. We're going to have to think about this.
I really don't know. Like I want to believe there is a strategic takeaway from this. Maybe there is. And we'll have to keep thinking. If you're finding a takeaway, we'd love to hear it. I just feel like, fantasy, when it comes down to it, like hockey, of all the major sports, is the one that is based the most on luck, which means that fantasy hockey is also going to carry with it a considerable amount of luck. And I just feel like that's what's happened here.
Okay. Yeah. So let's do the round. Let's read the names. So first was Andrew Mangiapane, who was a really good pick for a long time. Like maybe he hasn't kept it up, but definitely I'm sure helped the person who drafted him win the first few matchups. So definitely don't want to discount that. Then Swayman, who now all of a sudden with Tuukka Rask on the shelf, apparently he's not going to play at all this week. Brian, I don't want to do a victory lap or anything here, but we were kind of saying on the podcast, like not to fall over yourself to grab Tuukka Rask. And obviously we couldn't predict an injury, but it's not like he's been so amazing. Anyways, whatever. I hope he comes back and I hope he's fine. But all of a sudden now, like Jeremy Swayman becomes interesting in fantasy again. I think he's already scheduled to get tomorrow's start. So if you're listening to this, check and see if you can grab Swayman if you need a spot start, and maybe longer because he's had a really good year when he has been playing. Then you've got Kyle Palmieri, who was a total dud. He's like a kind of like a Sean Monahan, right? Like someone who like at one point was really good and now has just totally become a nothing, nobody. Like forget about him. That was your pick, by the way. Hopefully you dropped him quickly.
Yeah, I felt awful. I still feel awful about that pick because of some of the names that went after him, like Jesse Puljujarvi. I thought I should have. He was high. Anyway, whatever. Keep going.
Okay, keep going. Now we're gonna get some of these good defensemen. So Shane Gostisbehere, who has 28 points in 45 games. Power play 1, no one expected that. Connor Murphy, who's actually come on recently with some really good peripherals, but obviously he's not one of these huge defensemen in this round. So far, Gostisbehere, Ben Bishop, that's obviously a bust, but worth a shot. Josh Morrissey has been pretty blah. Then Moritz Seider. You could have had Moritz Seider in the last round. What a pick. Then Beauvillier, Puljujarvi, Tomasino, and then Evan Bouchard. Wow. Then Christian Dvorak and Pavel Francouz. Yeah, like you said, 3 really stud defensemen in Bouchard, Seider, and Gostisbehere. 2 of them rookies. Oh, I guess Bouchard. I don't know if Bouchard. He's not a rookie, but 2 of them like new players. I guess people were smart to just take a shot, and it worked out really well. And then Gostisbehere, who was kind of like a new player in terms of he was in a new situation, which is really fitting well for him. So yeah, really interesting to see the value. It's really fun going through this draft. And again, maybe just to finish this off, again, top undrafted skaters. I'll give you like a top 10 or something of players by a couple points per game, not including players who have played like less than 10 games. Okay. So you've got Alex Tuck, Matt Duchene, Mason Marchment. Yeah, I guess just from those couple games, it's like shot him up the list like crazy. Matthew Boldy, Ryan Hartman, Nishushkin, Ilya Mikheyev, Troy Terry, Boone Jenner, Duclair, Tage Thompson. I feel like I'll stop when there's someone that like Rodriguez, Nelson, Marcus Foligno, Adrian Kempe, Barbashev, Andrew Kopp, Iafallo, Skinner. Like it's a really long list of really good players that went undrafted. And then as far as top undrafted goalies, Brian, you brought up Jonathan Quick and his great save percentage. I guess he's kind of slowed down recently, but he was obviously a great free agent pickup earlier in the year. James Reimer, I think he could also still have a strong second half once he's fully healthy. Then Koskinen has had a lot. This is just ordered by a total couple of points because with goalies you want to have volume, and obviously he's benefited from Mike Smith being out of the lineup. Vejmelka, Vanacek, who could be he's injured again, unfortunately. Braden Holtby also was good for a while. So yeah, some decent goalies, but definitely the skaters that were undrafted really jump out at me. But anyways, I guess I didn't even let you talk about round 18. Did you want to talk about any of those defensemen there?
No, I'll just name Evan Bouchard, even without being, having whittled, whatever. Okay. No, first I'll just. Oh, sorry. No, I'm just going to name Evan Bouchard as the all-star of the group. Even though he wasn't on, like he hadn't yet worked his way onto the top power play unit, he was still doing a lot in the peripheral categories. And yeah, he's on a team that scores a pile of goals, and he was getting in on enough to be the one who averaged the highest couple fantasy points per game of this group. So Evan Bouchard is going to be my all-star. And yeah, there's no need for a no-star here. Although I will say that I think Kyle Palmieri is the one who
put him in.
Was supposed to be somewhat steady. Like, yeah, I could say Philip Tomasino, who didn't end up hasn't really ended up playing. Christian Dvorak hasn't done anything at all. But Kyle Palmieri is the one guy who, I don't know, I don't know, Elon, was I dumb to think in round 18 that Kyle Palmieri could be like some kind of steady-ish fantasy presence?
I just remember at the time we were seeing quotes from Trotz being like, it's either going to be Palmieri or Wallstrom that's on the top line with Lee and Barzal, and we're going to try both of them. And so it seemed like
first line talk, but first line, and it turns out that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't, regardless of your deployment in New York, for the Islanders, you're in trouble. So I'm not going to add him because we're not doing no stars here. If I did, I would have had 2 of the last 4 no stars drafted, and that's kind of a parable for my draft. Thanks everybody for listening to our all-star and no-star fantasy hockey drafts. This concludes our all-star festivities. I'll recap the all-star team. Austin Matthews was the first player on it. He's still there. Cale Makar, and this is going in order. So from round 1 to round 18, the best player from each round: Austin Matthews, Cale Makar, Karil Kaprizov, Kyle Connor, Igor Shesterkin, Rupe Hintz, Jason Robertson, Jack Hughes, Timo Meyer, Drake Batherson, Tristan Jarry, Chris Kreider, Sergei Bobrovsky, Cam Atkinson, Jesper Bratt, Matt Zuccarello, and Evan Bouchard. Can you imagine if you got to draft that team? That'd be so fun. I did not draft that team. In fact, I drafted several of the no stars, who are in order beginning in round 1: Patrick Kane, Braden Point, Elias Pettersson, Jeff Petrie, Sean Couturier, Taylor Hall, Jordan Binnington, Alex Radulov, Dominic Kubalik, Jonathan Taves, Vince Dunn, Brendan Gallagher, Max Comtois, Tomas Tatar, Kirby Doc, and Carter Hutton.
Ouch. Yeah. Hopefully you ended up with more of those top guys. This has been a lot of fun, Brian. I've been enjoying going through all these lists with you, and a little bit of a non-standard Keeping Karlsson episode. But never fear, everyone. We're ready to go to get you through the final stretch of the season into your fantasy playoffs. So Ben and Lewis will be hitting you up with the short shifts tomorrow night. I guess that'll be out then for you Wednesday morning with all the news from today's and tomorrow's games. Then they'll do another show Thursday night as per usual. And then Brian will be back in the saddle to talk about all the latest NHL action next Sunday on our next mega show. So I'm really looking forward to it. Again, thanks everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed this show. If you want to support us, you can give us a 5-star review on iTunes. We always appreciate that. I know every podcast says that, so whatever. We're saying it too, okay? We wouldn't mind. We also have a Patreon where we have a really fun community. If you want to come aboard, join our Discord, ask for fantasy advice questions, get in on the fun conversations, talk about who you picked in the Tim Hortons challenge, and everything else. So if you're interested in that and some other perks also, you can read all about it at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. But with that, Brian, let's cue the outro music. Why don't you go ahead and read us the credits, and we'll go head out of here and go check on Twitter and see what's going on with Austin Matthews.
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons, especially our super supporters: Patty, Rob, David, Derek, Jake, Tom, Andrea, Christopher, and Flash. Thank you all. Thanks to our Cupful coordinator, Kevin A. Bear, for keeping things running smoothly with our co-commish team as well. And thank you, Shems Benamor, for keeping the amazing stream of fantasy news rolling on 3 essential Twitter accounts for anybody who wants to win their league: at Game Day Lions, at Game Day News NHL, and at Game Day Goalies. Logo art by BrandonWeeb.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, NBC Sports Edge, and of course, Yahoo.
Yahoo, Brian. This was a lot of fun. And like I said, a lot of good shows coming up on our feed. Make sure you're subscribed to Keeping Karlsson wherever you listen to podcasts. And Brian, I guess I'm just going to have to wait another week before I get to chat with you about what's going on in hockey. And what should I do while I wait?
Let's keep doing all we can to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone.
Blam. Thanks everyone for joining. Sorry for the technical difficulties early on. I don't even have a solution right now, but I'll look into it.
I'm really glad you sorted it out. What worked? Just turning your camera off?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know why. Like, I don't know. I need to figure it out. I'll hopefully give you a full um, retrospective once I have more
I look
information.
forward to the full retrospective.
All right. See you, everyone. Bye, Brian.
Bye. Thanks to everyone in the chat room. I didn't get to watch as much of it as I wanted to, but you guys were great. So thanks.